As all of you are aware, this year in this festival, we are commemorating the centenary of the discovery of the Harappan civilization. Hence, the topic for our festival is Harappan Civilization, a Century of Discovery. Just to refresh our memories a little, it was on 20th September 1924 that John Marshall, the then Director General of Archaeological Survey of India, announced to the world the discovery of remnants of a civilization along the banks of Indus. This announcement was made in the Illustrated News, London Illustrated News. Actually, the first Harappan site was discovered in 1921 itself. It was the city of Harappa in the Punjab region. Then in 1922, the city of Mohenjo-daro was discovered in the Sindh region along the banks of river Indus. It took archaeologists almost 3 years to confirm, consolidate, and collate all their findings before they could publish it and announce it to the world that they had found remnants of a civilization that had its own writing script. Now, just a small trivia here. John Marshall, when he worked on his earliest excavations, was either not fully aware or did not pay sufficient heed to what is known as the stratigraphic layers of a site. This is nothing but the various strata, layers, or depths at which objects are discovered, and obviously have a bearing on the history and study of these objects. But just because of this omission, many of Marshall's findings were subsequently either rendered useless or not considered authentic enough. In fact, many of the objects that he discovered and catalogued also got so hopelessly mixed in terms of their layers that it became impossible to segregate them subsequently. It was Mortimer Wheeler who succeeded Marshall, who was the first person to record the fact that the stratigraphic layers connected to the objects have to be noted down right from the time they are discovered through the cataloging and process of study. In fact, it was also Wheeler who brought about scientific principles into the field of archaeological excavation. Wheeler used to say that excavations need to be carried out with military precision. I mentioned this here because most of our speakers are archaeologists, and I wanted all of us to appreciate the thoroughness and precision with which they carry out their work. Now, moving on to our event. Yesterday was the inaugural day, and we had 2 brilliant lectures. Dr. Bisht talked about Dholavira, the city, and then Dr. Ajit Prasad talked about the landmark moments in the journey of discovering Harappan civilization over the last 100 years. Sorry. Today also, we have 2 important lectures lined up for you on the Harappan crafts and their role in the long-distance trade. Before we move on to the main program, I'd like to give you a very brief introduction about Tamil Heritage Trust. Tamil Heritage Trust, as I already mentioned yesterday, is an organization that was started almost 14 years ago by a group of like-minded volunteers with the main objective of understanding, appreciating, disseminating, and celebrating various aspects of Indian history and heritage, not just for the scholarly and the erudite, but the average public who may also have a passionate interest in the subject. Towards this end, THT conducts various events throughout the year. Primarily, we have talks and seminars. We have monthly talks on the first and third Saturdays of every month. Then in the December of every year, we have what is known as a Pechu Kacheri or the oratory concert to coincide with the musical concert or the December music season of Chennai. And then the Indology festival, we are in the midst of that. We also conduct various types of workshops. We have one-day workshops called How to See a Museum, How to See a Temple, etc. Where in the forenoon session, we have a series of lectures. And in the afternoon, we have practical site visits where the participants are taken and shown around whatever was discussed in the morning session. We have classroom sessions where we conduct classes on Grantham script, ancient maths, ancient Indian astronomy, etc. These are conducted from time to time. Then we also have something called Alamar Avai, which is aimed at the school teachers of Tamil Nadu. Here, over a series of weekend lectures, ideas and concepts are discussed with these teachers, the idea being that they take it further and disseminate it amongst their students. Then one of our most important activities, an in-house activity, which we call site seminar. Every year we zoom in on a particular site. You can see here our site seminar to Dolomita. Okay. And our volunteers study various aspects of the site for about 3 to 4 months. And we have a lot of in-house seminars. And then armed with this knowledge, we go to the particular site and study it. And we come back and document it. You're also hoping to publish a few books on these subsequently. THT has also constituted 2 important awards to commemorate individual contributions in these fields. The first is the Professor Swaminathan Heritage Award, named after our co-founder. And the second is the V. Venkaiah Epigraphy Award, co-hosted by THT, along with the great-granddaughter of Venkaiah, who was the first epigraphist of India. We also have a dedicated YouTube channel where you can find links to all our past programs, including yesterday's talks. Kindly subscribe and click on the bell icon to receive notifications of future events. We have a website and these are our social media handles. To be included in our mailing list, you may mail us in this address. Last but not the least, we are a voluntary organization and we do not have any consistent financial backing. So any kind of contributions are welcome and you may use this barcode or this address to give your contributions. As I already told you, today we are having 2 important and interesting talks scheduled. The first is a talk by Dr. V.N. Prabhakar on Harappan crafts and their role in long-distance trade. The artistic expressions of past humans date back to prehistoric times, and the excavation at Merghad provides the earliest evidence of the continuous evolution of such art on various mediums. The emergence of various craft activities at Merghad laid the foundation for later period diversifications. The Harappan phase saw the integration of several regional Chalcolithic cultures having differential access to raw material resources. Further, the innovations and improvements over earlier technologies led to distinct craft activities marked by lapidary, shell, and stoneware, bangles, and bead industries, apart from other artifacts. In his talk, Dr. Prabhakar will highlight the important craft activities of Harappans and their role in long-distance trade. Dr. Prabhakar, an expert in protohistoric archaeology of India, field archaeology, heritage management, etc., is an assistant professor of archaeology at IIT Gandhinagar. A former director of exploration and excavation at ASI, he specializes in application of sciences to archaeology. He was part of the excavation projects at Roopnagar, Punjab and Karanpura, Rajasthan, both of Harappa culture. Earlier in his career, he was also directly responsible for conservation and preservation of 166 nationally essential heritage structures, including the World Heritage properties of Ajanta and Ellora. Dr. Prabhakar has published around 40 research articles in journals, edited books, and conference proceedings. But above all this, he is extremely special to us because he helped us to plan this event, guided us on curating speakers, and played an important role in bringing THT's vision into its concrete current shape. Thank you so much, sir. Over to you.
Sir, you can share now.
Yeah, trying to. My folder is not visible.
If your presentation is up already, all you have to do is just share and
Now it is appearing. Now it is appearing. Is
Yeah.
it visible?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I thank the Tamil Heritage Trust for inviting me to talk on this topic. I would be discussing some aspects related to the Harappan crafts and ultimately its role in the long distance trade. Because whatever crafts created by the Harappans, it went on for both internal consumption as well as international trade too. So we are in the 100th year of the discovery of Harappan civilization, Indus civilization, Indus Valley civilization, Sindhu Saraswati civilization, Sindhu civilization. There are too many names, but all refer to one civilization, that is the earliest urbanized society of South Asia. And it was announced on September 20th, 1924 by John Marshall of the Archaeological Survey of India. So one of the most important aspect is that he published several seals in his article in the Illustrated London News, and it was noticed by scholars working in West Asia. And immediately in the following issue on September 27, 1924, Professor A.H. Sais, he brought to light the similarities of the Harappan seals found in a datable context at Susa. And immediately we came to know about the contacts of the Harappans with the Mesopotamian world and the contemporaneous nature of Harappan civilization with West Asia. So this is how we came to know with a single piece of article. The entire world came to know about the earliest urban civilization in India. So since then, several fieldwork in South Asia, Oman, West Asia, Central Asia, several regions, they have been looking into the process of urbanization. All the red ones here, it refers to the urban societies. And before that, there were several early societies which were not urban per se, but they all emanated from a Neolithic food producing era. That is to say that since the beginning of Holocene era, that is around 12,000 years back, several climatic changes induced the humans to adapt the production of food as well as domestication of animals. That led to a settled life. This settled life led to the development of various crafts, which is also true in the case of the Indian subcontinent, where we see from the site of Mehergarh, from the earliest context of around 7th millennium BCE onwards, we do have evidence of settled human life, domestication of plants and animals, the domestication of certain animals like the zebu cattle, which is so unique to the Indian subcontinent, all started at Mehergarh, which in a way paved way for later period technologies. So we see a gradual development of all these technologies at Mehergarh for over a period of 5,000 years. Ultimately, it ended around 2600, 2500 BCE. Again, the process was taken over from a nearby site known as Nosharo, from where we start to see the Harappan elements slowly entering into the that region. So we see a very beautiful evolution of cultures, the evolution of different technologies, adaptations, as well as refinements, which ultimately the Harappans took on, and they refined it to such an extent that they started to export to West Asia. So the Harappan crafts, they became so popular at one point of time, and it continued for nearly 500 to 600 years. That is the most unique aspect that we see from the Mesopotamian records, that the Harappan artifacts, they were in demand, and they were exported starting from the early dynastic third, that is 2500 BCE, to the Eastern Lhasa period, that is around 1900 BCE. So it's a long evolutionary process which started at Mehergarh, and ultimately the Harappans took a lot of help, or we can say, and ultimately they took over it and refined it extensively. So we do have evidence. I mean, I'll just quickly pass over these slides, because we have at Mehergarh the earliest evidence of domestication of barley and wheat, and they were harvesting the crops with stone blades set in bitumen. Ultimately, they were fitted in wooden handles, and they were also using polished stone tools. And another very important social practice is that they were applying red ochre all over their body. So this is how they were living there at that particular point of time. And from the Mehergarh itself, we come to know about the earliest evidence of the long distance trade. We do have evidence of certain varieties of shell coming to Mehergarh. That is Turbinella pyrum, which is coming from the Gulf of Kutch and the Karachi coast area. Certain varieties of shell known as Angina mendicera, it's coming from Makran coast, and mother of pearl coming from the Oman coast. So all these materials, they are coming from nearly 600 kilometers to 1,500 kilometers, clearly indicating the kind of enterprising nature and also the social organization, because procuring such valuable products from faraway distance, it requires a lot of social organization, and maybe some sort of social hierarchy also emanated there, that induce them to procure these kind of exotic materials, maybe for the use of elites. Not only these shell products, they were also getting lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, turquoise from Central Asia, and various other raw materials like steatite, then carnelian. All of them, they are coming there, and clearly indicates their contacts with distant communities, maybe directly or indirectly, because indirectly it seems to be more plausible, because to interact with those distant communities without any intermediary site at the present state of knowledge, we may not be in a position to prove that. But there could be several intermediaries who might have operated to procuring the finished products also, like this shell bangle. It was a finished product. It reached Mehergarh. So this is the earliest evidence for long distance trade, but the craft activities, it was also developing there at Mehergarh, which is beautifully illustrated by this presence of drill bits, which were used to perforate the very, very hard materials like carnelian. This is again the inner holes of a bead, cornelian bead, where clear indications of rotary motion drilling was used using these kind of drill bits. One can see the clear polish on the drill bits, which clearly indicates the drilling motion for perforating the bead. So again, this is the earliest evidence for bead manufacturing. This kind of drilling using the rotary motion became the hallmark of the Harappans, but they introduced another material known as earnestite, which we'll see later. So we do find social hierarchy emerging there in the burials, with the differential interment of ornaments and also other grave goods. So these are some of the evidences there. And one such burial contained the stone tools. I mean, if you look at the stone tools and the raw materials, these all indicates the toolkit, the entire toolkit of a person who might have been a lithic manufacturer, who might have been a tool manufacturer, and he compiled everything, and it was buried along with him. So these kind of stone blades, when they are retouched and they are fitted on bitumen like this. This is the bitumen which survived the vagaries of nature, but the wooden handle, it did not lost. This is a modern replica of how a sickle might have been made, because you can see the blade set here with bitumen and also the wooden handle. So such sort of sickles, they were used for harvesting the crops, both wild as well as the domesticated varieties. So another burial yielded the evidence of the impression of a basket. Basketry was a very important craft activity before the ceramics came into existence. And even though, I mean, it's very difficult to find evidence of baskets, because it is organic in nature, it will be completely lost in the archaeological record. But we do have beautiful evidence of this basket impression found along with a burial. This is a modern example of how basketry even exists even today. And many scholars believe that the designs on the pottery, they were in continuation of the basketry designs which were produced prior to the production of the ceramics. So these are some of the earliest ceramic ceramic examples coming from Mehergarh itself. This belongs to the period 1. Then we have subsequently sophisticated ceramics were being produced, and multiple designs, polychrome, multiple colors were produced. And again, this is due to the control of fire. I mean, they were able to control the fire to such an extent that they can produce the ceramics with such sophisticated nature. I mean, they can build large kilns so that they can bake the ceramics to very high temperature. Again, this later on became a separate profession itself, and we do find evidence from Harappa that how the kiln activities for firing the ceramics existed at a particular place at Harappa for nearly 700 to 800 years. So these are all the earliest stages. I mean, why I'm showing Mehergarh is that it is the place where we do find evidence of all craft activities, all evidences of long distance trade, and also certain important precursors to later period sophisticated technologies. So we do have another very important evidence of steatite. Steatite were being fired to high temperature so that it can attain this kind of a white color appearance. So this white color appearance of steatite was most preferred by the Mehergarh people, and later on it became a hallmark feature of the Harappans. We do find unfired steatite. So this is unfired steatite from another site known as Shahitump on the Makran coast. They were using unfired as well as both fired steatite for jewelry. But later on, the Harappans adopted this fired steatite only for manufacturing various kind of jewelry, like this micro beads, which are very tiny in nature, to certain statuettes which they produced. So this is the kind of evidence. Again, we have to go back to Mehergarh, where we see the earliest occurrences of heating steatite to produce a typical white color. So from Mehergarh, what we see is that from the later on, we do see the emergence of cultures based on different technologies. Later on, copper emerged, and they were also marked by typical ceramic markers. So this is a collage of various ceramic markers from different parts of the Indian subcontinent. In the western part, we do find these ceramics in the Balochistan area, in the lower Sindh area, in the Rajasthan, Punjab area, and the Makran, and finally in the Gujarat region. So we do have a collage of various ceramic traditions existing contemporary to each other, but they have different adaptations, and they were living in a different economical scenario. So all these regional Chalcolithic cultures, they integrated around 2600 BC, 2500 BC. The dates vary from site to site. It is not a benchmark date, but it has its own internal chronologies. But the point is that all regional Chalcolithic cultures came together or integrate together to form a uniform one whole, so that they can better utilize the raw materials which were otherwise spread all around the Indus plains. If you look into the Indus and the Gagar Hakra, which is identified with the river Saraswati, so if you see the location of this greater Indus region, all the raw materials are located all around it. I mean, there is no raw material on the plains. It's all alluvium, so you don't have any stone materials. So one has to look all around, and that's why they had to kind of bring together all these kind of raw materials coming from different regions. For example, from Gujarat, carnelian is available. For Harappa, they have to get it from Gujarat only. There is no other source. The best quality steatite is available from the northern region of Pakistan, so they have to get it from this region only. So all these skewed distribution of raw materials kind of force them to kind of come together, so that they can better utilize or better exploit these raw materials. And another thing is, scholars generally believe that this integration was possible because of a common ideology shared by many of the regional Chalcolithic cultures. One or two markers I would like to mention. One is the people leaf motif. People leaf motif, we start to find the depiction of people leaf on ceramics in the Soti wall, that is the eastern region, in the Sindh region, in the Balochistan region, even as far as Mundiga. So there are certain ideological markers which clearly indicate that the people were believing in one particular ideology, and later on that could have kind of helped in integrating this entire culture, and what we call it as the Harappan civilization, which has its again uniform characteristics, even though there are certain regional variations which are all present there. So along with the Harappan civilization, we do find two more contemporary cultures. One is in the upland Balochistan, known as the Kulli, and another is the in the Saurashtra region known as the Sorat Harappans. Even though they existed contemporary to the Harappan civilization, they did not share the cultural traits of the Harappans per se. So that's why they are discussed separately when we discuss the Harappans. There are a set of scholars who don't even consider this entire region as part of the Harappan civilization, because there is no sites present here. So there are various views. That's why the overall distribution of Harappan civilization varies from 0.7 square kilometer, 0.7 million square kilometers to 1.5 million square kilometers. So it's a huge variation. Otherwise, there are many blank areas also. So we do have a better chronology now. Yesterday, I think it was discussed in detail. So I would like to discuss again some of the crafts of the Harappans. One is the hallmark Harappan ceramics. If you look at the Harappan ceramics, one can very clearly make out the distinct forms and shapes, and also the kind of surface decorative features, and also the surface color, and all of these things. These forms and shapes, they were specific to the Harappans' necessities, what they were cooking, what they were eating, what they were serving, what they were transporting. So it is unique to the Harappan culture. It will not be found in Oman or Mesopotamia. So if you find certain Harappan ceramics in that particular region, one can blindly say, oh yeah, I mean, this came from the Harappan region. So that is how these ceramics become unique markers of certain cultures in a given time and space. So to describe some of them, this is a typical Harappan cooking pot. I mean, no other culture used this kind of a cooking pot at that particular time period, and that is also a clear-cut marker. They manufactured this kind of large storage jars, which were used for transportation. These are known as black slip jars, which can go even up to a height of 1.5 meters. So these I call them as the containers, Harappan containers, in which they put a lot of materials and they transported it to West Asia, Oman, Bahrain, and other regions. These are storage jars with a pointed base, which can be fitted into the ground. And there is a variety of plain ceramics as well as the painted ceramics. These plain ceramics and the painted ceramics, they all have the same form. I mean, if you look at the shape and forms of the ceramics, they're all same. Only thing is the painted ceramics might have been more costlier to manufacture, and also it might have been costlier for purchase also. So that could indicate the differential status of the communities. We do find evidence of manufacturing and how they have firing the ceramics. We do find this type of a updraft kiln. This is known as an updraft kiln because the fire is at the base. They lit a fire here, and the heat is radiated through these holes into the platform. This is a platform, and the ceramics are placed above this platform. There will be a domical roof over that covering this entire ceramics, which were stacked here, so that the very high temperatures can be produced. But normally in an archaeological record, you won't be finding this kind of an excellent evidence. This is from a site known as Khirsara in Gujarat, where a near complete kiln has been discovered. This is from Baror in Rajasthan. You can see only the base is surveyed. The stump, the base of the stump, I mean, which usually comes here. The pillar comes here. So there is a base is preserved. Over this, the pillar will come, and above that, the platform will come. So all these things, due to vagaries of nature, and also due to erosion and destruction due to various kinds. But at Harappa, they have found the evolution of kilns thanks to the excavations by Harappa Archaeological Research Project under various scholars, including Sir Mark Canoyer. We do find evidence of the kilns dating back to 3300 BC. This is the Ravi period kiln dating back to 3300 BCE. Then a Codigian kiln and a Harappan kiln. This is the Harappan kiln. So one can see the increase in the size, dimensions. It also indicates the demand for the ceramics, because the city was growing, the population was growing naturally. Ceramics was the only medium for various activities, various purposes for cooking, storage, and also serving. So there was a huge demand, and they have to produce more and more. But interestingly, for a period of nearly 700, 800 years, the potters, they were located in the same place. They were building the kiln in the same place. It clearly indicates the sophistication and also the crystallization of a community who were producing ceramics only. So this is a very beautiful evidence from Harappa, and they were producing such wonderful ceramics, both painted and unpainted. These are all ceramics from the burials. From the burials, we do get ceramics in the most preserved form, because they are put in complete form along with the dead ones. So, and immediately they are buried, so we can find them in the most preserved conditions. Otherwise, in the habitation sites, many of them, they are broken, even though sometimes we are lucky to find some complete ones. Some of the ceramics, they are all very good chronology markers, as noticed by Canoyer, who has done an extensive radiocarbon dating from the site of Harappa. So he points to the fact this pointed based goblet. This is a goblet or a cooler, one can say, which is even used in modern context for serving lassi and all. You can see this base. It is twisted. I mean, they were manufacturing these coolers in such a large number, maybe hundreds and thousands. They are manufacturing. They are removing that from the wheel in a careless manner. That's why one can see the twisted base of these goblets. And again, this starts from around 2100 BC. This sort of pointed based goblets with careless removal from the wheel. So from this datable context, one can clearly say, okay, this kind of goblets, they origin from they come into existence around 2100 BC, and not only at Harappa, it is also similar at Mohenjo-daro. So this sort of inter-site comparisons help in further refining the chronology in a larger context. They were painting the ceramics. They were using various designs. I mean, one of the popular motif is the intersecting circle pattern. You can see the intersecting circle pattern here. It is also depicted here. The people leaf pattern, which is very common, and also fish scales. They were depicted. The animals like fish and peacock, they were depicted. So all of them, it might have recurred a separate. I mean, if a family is producing ceramics, there should be members of the family who are only executing the paintings. So it's highly specialized art. I mean, it's not that anyone might be able to produce this kind of paintings again and again on thousands and thousands of ceramics. So it might have been a separate specialized activity of certain members of the family potters who are producing this thing, and they were all using the organic colors, organic and the inorganic colors, for producing different colors on the pottery surface. Certain ceramics, they are enigmatic, like this perforated jar. We don't know the exact function of this perforated jar, even though we are nearing the conclusion of certain studies we are undertaking to understand its exact function. But one thing to notice is that these perforated jars, they were used in association with another larger vessel. This is from Harappa and this is from Kalibangan. Kalibangan, again, the same sort of situation. So the contextual analysis becomes very important. And from this context, we clearly understand that this perforated jar was never used in isolation. It was always used in conjunction with another vessel. And the function could be something straining a liquid, like in the case of straining oils or maybe some beer products. Anything can be done using this kind of arrangements. There are modern examples available where soya oil can be extracted using this kind of an arrangement. Instead of the perforated jar, they are using a bamboo basket, vertical basket. And in another case, there are certain examples of rice beer being produced using this kind of an arrangement. So there is a possibility of finding out what could be the exact function, and we are doing certain lipid analysis to understand the exact function of these ceramics. So this is one enigmatic ceramic. Another is that the black slip jar. I have briefly mentioned about this black slip jar. It was used as a container, I believe, because such a large vessel, it can be used for transporting many different products, which can be put inside the container, and it can be sealed with a leather or a cloth, or already and tied, and over the knot can be put a sealing. So these sort of black slip jars, they are found in Sindh region, Harappa, and also in the Kutch region, especially at Dholavira and Shikarpur, and also in Oman. Oman was the intermediary zone where the Harappans ventured into the West Asia for a large quantum of trade. At Oman, at a site known as Ras Al Jins, they have noticed a fragment of a black slip jar with 4 or 5 lettered Harappan inscription also. So this is a clear indication, and these pointed base portion of this black slip jar, they were fitted into the deck of the ship so that they cannot roll here and there. So this is how the arrangement for transportation in a ship. So another very important clue is that the presence of Harappans is that they have found a lot of Harappan ceramics or Harappan type ceramics manufactured with the local clay also in the Oman region. I mean, this is the typical Harappan cooking pot, and these are the cooking pots found in the Oman region, and also dish on stand, perforated jars. So the Harappans, wherever they are traveling, just because they have adjusted to their own lifestyle, their own cooking style, and also their culinary practices, they were requiring their own cooking utensils also. So that's why wherever they are going, they were reproducing their same vessel forms, and more examples we can see in the Oman region. So one more craft activity is the copper. Copper, as we all know, I mean, we call the cultures before the Harappans as chalcolithic, because they were producing copper as well as lithic implements. And later on, when they were alloying, we call the Harappans as the Bronze Age. But copper, we do have evidence from the Neolithic Mehergad itself in the form of hammered copper that could be native copper, because native copper was available in the nature that could be very easily procured, and with very little effort, one can modify and produce various kind of ornaments or implements. Also, this is a bead from Mehergad, and because of the salts, the copper salts, the organic material, they are preserved. So whenever there is a copper material found in an excavation, I mean, the surrounding soils can also be examined so that it might have some remains of pollen, or it may have some organic remains. So interestingly, this copper bead had remains of some thread, which proved out to be a cotton thread. So the evidence of cotton immediately came from this discovery, and it dates back to the Neolithic Mehergad, and also cotton seeds were discovered later on. So copper was a very important technology. There were several theories about how the copper was exploited by the Harappans from different ore zones in Gujarat as well as Rajasthan, maybe Balochistan sources, or even from Oman. So there are a lot of sources which are being studied, and slowly they are being mapped in such a manner that how they were exploited can be clearly understood. So they produced various artifacts, various utensils, implements, day-to-day tools, and all those things they were produced. And it is a separate profession, a specialized profession, because building a kiln itself or a furnace itself for smelting copper is very, very difficult. And again, in the Harappan towns, it is very rare to find these kind of smelting evidences. What the scholars believe is that probably the Harappans, they were setting up facilities near the copper ore sources to smelt them, and then they were manufacturing the ingots. These are the ingots are some predefined weight. Pure metal can be produced near the smelting sites, and then it can be used for trading purposes, and then they are brought to the towns and the cities, and they were melted, and they were modified into different implements. We also try to kind of duplicate or replicate the copper smelting process with the help of Professor Mark Canoyer. He set up a experimental archaeology lab here, and we try to replicate copper use from the Ambaji copper mines. There's a Ambaji copper mines which is very close to Gandhinagar, which is now an abandoned copper mine because the percentage of copper is very less now. So we gathered some bits and fragments from here. Then we crushed it, and then we heated it and smelted it in this furnace, and ultimately we were able to produce very fine, very small, tiny copper prills. So this process enabled us to understand the procurement network, and also the processing of the copper ores, then the building the furnace, then firing them, and ultimately getting the final product. So this really helps to peep into the minds of the ancient craftsmen, and also the smelting process. Coming to the textile remains, from Mehergarh, we came to know about the presence of copper. We also did some analysis of a thread remain from inside a copper bead from Dholavira, which again turned out to be a probability of cotton and jute. Both are there, but it's very difficult because of certain preservation conditions. The morphology also changes. But nevertheless, one can see the very beautiful remains of a thread from inside a bead. This is a copper bead, broken bead, and you can see the remains when viewed under scanning electron microscope under different magnifications. One can clearly understand the pattern. Also, another evidence is the how they were actually spinning the wools for manufacturing the thread. So the threads also, it's a very important process. How the threads are twisted. There are various kind of twisting process. Z twist and S twist, and ZS and SZ. There are various kind of twisting process the craft person you employ to spin the cotton into a thread. For that, they require a spindle hole. I mean, this is the arrangement you have. You should have a stick like this, and the spindle hole is fitted at the bottom. So this is a bottom down spindle hole. They rotate this stick very fast, and with one hand the cotton thing will be there. Then from that they will gradually spin the thread. So interestingly, at one site in Karanpura, we found these spindle holes at a single floor level of a house, and all of them have the same graffiti. I mean, in particular, this graffiti forms part of the Harappan sign list also. So it is very interesting to note that some of the weavers, they might have been using the spindle holes, but they were also put their mark also. So from the weight of the spindle holes, one can always guess what could be the thickness of the thread also. So this is another possibility, whether they were producing thicker threads or thinner threads. That also we can understand. Another craft activity which is very much important related to the food. Whatever they are producing, wheat, barley, and the cereals, they have to crushed, and they have to be converted into a flour so that they can make bread. Further, they have to produce grinding stones. So we do find grinding stones, a lot of grinding stones, but in a broken condition, but always used to the maximum. You can see this is a saddle coin. I mean, it has been used extensively so that it has eroded at the top, and they have to do the menial work. I mean, they have to do every day, or maybe it could have been left to certain members of the family to kind of do this activity again and again so that they can get the flour. So the rotary coins, it came later, but the saddle coins, they are the earliest, and they were the during the initial period. They were making flour using this kind of arrangement. One has to put this on the ground, they have to kneel, and they have to put pressure, and they have to grind. So it was a very difficult task, unlike the present day where we shop online and we get flour within no time. But this was a very tedious job performed by every family member or every family during those times for making bread. And these kind of grinding stones, they require very hard material. They should be having at least a quartz or quartzite in the matrix, so that it becomes very hard. Otherwise, softer stones, they will also get eroded so easily. It will enter into the food chain, and it will be very difficult for the humans to consume such grains with a lot of a lot of stone particles also. So the Harappans exploited different raw materials for producing the grinding stones. Randalla has done an extensive study of the exploitation of raw materials for Harappa side. They were getting raw materials for grinding stones from all over Harappa, all around Harappa. But in that context, they were also getting grinding stones from a place known as Kalyana in Haryana, where interestingly, even today they produce grinding stones. I mean, that is the quality of Delhi quartzite stone here, so that they can produce grinding stones. And even today they use this grinding stone. Another material is that gray sandstone, which is very hard, and it came from the foothills of the Shiva lakes, and they were also exploited. So when I was excavating Karanpura, we documented the Kalyana quartzite. This is the Kalyana quartzite, from where it is coming from here. And we also noticed that many of the sites in Haryana, they all have this kind of grinding stone with a typical blackish streak or a blackish line on it. So this is the route in which it might have reached several sites. Ultimately, Kalibangan, from Kalibangan, it might have gone even up to Harappa. So one can understand the long distance network. I mean, how they were able to locate certain raw materials which were suitable for them, and they are taking all the pains to get those materials from far away distance. So this is the enterprising nature, and also the network they have established due to the integration of regional Chalcolithic cultures. So again, these gray sandstone also was in use, particularly in this region. It did not reach Harappa, but at least we can see this kind of stone in this region. So we do find very good evidence for other craft activities like shell, many products from the shell, particularly bangles from Turbinella pyrum. This is one such thick-shelled variety of shells through which one can produce this kind of bangles. And the Harappans, they produce this kind of inverted V design known as the chevron design. They were also producing thinner bowls with grooves, and also these kind of bowls and the wider bangles also. They produce ladles, which might have been used as a feeding cups, or also used in rituals for libations and all. So they produce this one from a shell variety known as Chicoreus ramosus. So they were exploiting various kinds of shells for different products, and they were producing beautiful inlays also. I mean, if you look into the inlays separately, you won't understand the exact function, but when we try to combine them together, interesting patterns do emerge. But shell was also used for various other purposes, for making even weights. This is the collection of weights from Dholavira, where very small weights to larger weights were also being found. They were also making shell beads for making necklaces, and these kind of bowls, which could have been ritualistic in nature, but also, you see, they're producing the people leaf in a stylistic pattern, indicating certain rituals attached. I mean, if you look at the map of the raw material occurrences, the shell products, they are available in this area, the Gulf of Kutch, all along up to the Karachi coast, and also in the Gulf of Khambat region, from where they might have exploited. So I was mentioning about the shell inlays. I mean, the shell inlays, they are so important. I mean, one can find them on the potteries. I mean, you can see this kind of the stepped pyramid. It is found on the ceramics also. You can see the ceramics designed from Nal. This is the Nal culture of Upland Balochistan, where one find these kind of things. And this is a petal, form of a petal. If arranged in a circular pattern, it can form a flower. And these designs, they are typical intersecting circle patterns. I mean, when we started to combine these shell inlays in various combinations, we do find them emerging into different patterns, which are also depicted on the ceramics. And in one instance in Kalibanga, it is also on the floor tile. So these things are very, very much used on the textiles also, not only on the ceramics, not only on the floor tiles and all. If you look into the modern day Kutch handicrafts, they do preserve a lot of ancient traditions and ancient design patterns. And that's why you can see this is another triangular design. When combined together, it can make another design that is also found on the textiles of these ladies. And This one, if you see again this design, it is occurring on the modern Ajrak printed pattern textiles, very famous in the Kutch region. So we do find these shell inlays which might have been sewn into textiles for creating various patterns and creating very beautiful decorative things. And due to the whitish nature, if it is if it is embroidered along on a dark textile, so it could have produced a very beautiful effect. Another important craft is the stoneware bangle. Again, this is very much unique to the Harappans. It did not exist before the Harappans, and it was discontinued after the Harappans. It is a sophisticated technology. Even today, it is very difficult to manufacture them, and very rare occurrences. It is found only from Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and Dholavira. Recently from Dholavira also it has come. From Dholavira we have found only 100 odd fragments, not complete ones. It is very difficult to find such complete ones. Most of them, they are broken in nature, and they are found in two basic colors, the grayish to blackish variety, and also the light reddish to darker reddish. And because of the oxidization and the reduction conditions in which they were fired, if there is no supply of oxygen, it will turn into gray, black, etc. If there is supply of oxygen, it will turn into reddish variants. And when the initial analysis was done, when only examples from Harappa and Mohenjo-daro was available, they clearly indicate that they belong to two distinct chemical groups. I mean, from the soil in which they were made, it has chemical properties, and they were analyzed. It clearly indicates that Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, they belong to different chemical groups. But they also found another very important aspect is that bangles manufactured from Mohenjo-daro, they also reached Harappa. Maybe Harappans, some of the Harappans, they procured bangles from Mohenjo-daro also. Interestingly, they also have inscriptions. If you see these bangles, they have very short inscriptions, 2 letters, 3 letters inscriptions, which may be ownership records, because they were very rare in nature, very costly, only meant for the elites maybe. So they were also inscribing their names over them. And only from the site of Mohenjo-daro, we have come across evidence for manufacturing of the stoneware bangles. And it's a very beautiful arrangement of double canister system, which were put over this terracotta rings. And ultimately, when it was covered, a seal impression was put on this lid. So it's a clear indication it was produced under certain controlled administrative process. It's not that anybody is doing, or it might have been meant for only certain sections of the society. That's why they were having a definite control over that. Now we come to Gujarat. Gujarat is the home for agate carnelian, the most exotic raw material, which was used widely for making various kind of ornaments. And again, that ornament ultimately reached various places all over the world. World means old world, up to Greece. We have now evidence of this material gone. It may not be the contemporary time period. It might have gone later also. But Gujarat, it's very unique geography. The northern part of Gujarat is known as the Kutch region, which was a complete island at one particular point of time. If you look at the 3rd millennium BC scenario, the sea levels were higher, or the land level was lower. So it was completely an island. That would be a waterway connecting the little run of Kutch with the Gulf of Kambat. So there was brisk trade happening in this region. I mean, the entire Gulf of Kutch, it's all dotted with Harappan sites. All the red ones are all Harappan sites on the coastal ones. And Dholavira is located here on the Kadir Island, and they were connected directly to local people. They were not traveling all around the Saurashtra to spend extra time or take risk of traveling such a long distance. They were taking a shorter route and reaching Dholavira within 2 days. And raw materials are occurring here. If you look at the raw material distribution, agate carnelian is located here. The most important Rajpipla, Ratanpur mines, they are located here. From here, they might have been procured, and then it reached Dholavira. There are other mines also. There is another mine is here, Mardak Bait. Then Kandik is there. So from these 3 locations, Dholavira people also got agate carnelian. It has been proved scientifically. And Other important raw materials are located here. The Sambaji copper source is there. Then steatite is there. So there are various raw materials which are in Gujarat that help the Harappans to do a lot of craft activities. One meticulous and sophisticated craft is this creation of stone pillar members, which is only unique to Dholavira. They were producing it here, because we do know a craft center or a quarry site from where they were producing these kind of pillars. I mean, there is an incomplete pillar member located here. From here, they produced the incomplete one. Then they brought to the city, and then they kind of finish them to high precision with exact geometrical proportions, and they were used in the construction also. You can see the construction in situ position where we see the usage of these pillars. It is a reconstruction. They were using a square pillar with which they used a biconcave one or a damru shaped one. Then they used two biconvex one, and over that came the wooden member. I mean, this is a reconstruction of one of the divisions of Dholavira, where two gates had this kind of pillar elements. You can see this is the central passage. There's a human scale. One can see how massive they were. I mean, the basal part is here, then the damru shaped one and biconvex, and then the wooden pillar, it supported the lintel. So this is how the arrangement, and it would have been very massive. Whenever a visitor comes to Dholavira, he might have seen the stupendous architecture and the magnificent structures which were beyond belief. No other settlement had this kind of gateways in the entire Kutch. Maybe in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, there could have been gateways, but we don't have well-preserved ones. But at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, we do have the banded limestone of Dholavira from near Dholavira, where they have been manufactured, and they might have been transported through boats, because it was all arm of the sea. Then they came to the river mouths, Saraswati River and the Indus River. Then they might have transported through the boats to Mohenjo-daro first, and then to Harappa. So it's a very tedious, very difficult task of carrying some 400-500 kg pillar members each, and transporting into Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. So this is how the highest level of craftsmanship, as well as the mastery in transporting them. I mean, it's not so easy to transport them. So we do find different types of pillar members which are described as ring stones. These are known as ring stones in the earlier excavation reports of Marshall and Mackay. But these are typical from the Khadir Island. And these kind of buff ones, they might have come from different zones. Randall observes that they might have come from also from a different zone or different region, most probably from Jaisalmer region, where certain buff varieties are also available. But evidences from sites like this Lakhanjadoro, where one can see the depiction of a pillar on a terracotta, right? I mean, you can see the this pillar, the shaft is of wavy nature. This is the sort of thing. Then there are two biconvex one, and then comes the bracket. So this kind of pillars might have existed. I mean, that's why they have depicted. Next, coming to the agate carnelian jewelry, Dholavira alone has produced enough ernestite material. This material is known as ernestite, which is slightly harder than agate cornelian. Agate is 7 in the scale of hardness. This may be around 7.1 or 7.2. So it was slightly harder, but not extremely hard. But this was the most sophisticated technology available at that particular point of time, and they were able to produce this kind of drill bits for perforation into the agate cornelian. This I told earlier, from where they got the agate cornelian, from Ratanpur, from Mardak, and Khandik. These are the three sources from where Dholavira people got, and they were also producing various other kinds of jewelry. I mean, this is known as Vesuanite. This is moss agate, this is amazonite. They were procuring different raw materials. I mean, these raw materials, as I told earlier, they were all spread across the entire Greater Indus region. So they have to manage them. They have to interact with so many communities spread over the different regions. They have to talk to merchants and traders. So that's how they were procuring a large quantity of raw materials. This is steatite coming from northern sources from this region, and they were producing very beautiful disc beads out of them. Coming to earnestite, this is the raw material. Very few raw material of earnestite we do find, particularly from Dholavira. We have got a few, and one or two from Kanmer, Shikarpur, Bagasura, and but plentiful of finished earnestite. These are the earnestite. I mean, we documented around 1586 earnestite drill bits from Dholavira. In comparison, Harappa has only 65 drill bits. I mean, if you put together all the excavation seasons at Harappa, only 65 when compared to Dholavira, which is around 1586. So they were used to drill in a traditional bore drill mechanism. This artisan from Khambat, Pratap Bhai, he still uses the same kind of technology, bore drill technology. He uses the toolkit. So this is the wooden shaft in which this the thread of the bow is tied and it is rotated. And here he uses a iron shaft at the tip of which he puts two very tiny diamond. That is the present day technology. But instead of this iron shaft, they might have used the earnestite. This is the drilling process which the Prataba uses. You can see how he is rotating. This is the wooden holder where the bead is put here. And he puts the wooden shaft here, puts inside the bow, and then he rotates. But he uses a diamond tip drill. I mean, the diamond tip drill, it makes the drilling so easy, so he can fully perforate 2 centimeter long agate cornelian bead in less than 5 minutes. But with earnestite, it might have taken a long time. I mean, scholars estimate that for perforating 1 mm or 2 mm, it might have taken one hour. So it's very difficult to perforate in the earnestite. This is the mechanism. From here, water drips here so that it cools, because the rotation produces a lot of heat and friction, so it has to be cooled down, so the water drips here. So along with the drilling, quartz particles are coming out. It is collected here in a bowl, which is poured into the pot again. So the quartz particles mix with the water. When it comes here, it abrasive. So this is the kind of a mechanism what the Harappan might have also. And they were using various polishers for bringing a very beautiful shiny surface. We have found a lot of these things from Dholavira, and they were drilling from both the ends of longer beads. These are the longer beads. I will show you the waistband for which they were producing these longer beads. These longer beads, they were produced. I mean, they were perforated from both the ends, so that we find such a stepped pattern, and they exactly meet at the center. So again, that is a sophisticated technology, and they might have practiced it for several generations together to achieve this kind of sophistication. We do find in Khambat, the modern bead manufacturers, they do follow the same kind of pattern, and we see the exact parallel in an archaeological site from Channudodo. This is from Channudodo, where we do find the kind of various stages of manufacture, and ultimately they were polishing it and producing them. At Khambat also, they do the same thing, but with mechanized process. This is a small area of 10 by 15 300 square feet area. The craftsman sits here and he chips the stone to produce a rough surface. It is polished here and it is heated here to produce the typical red color surface. But unfortunately, this craft space which I documented in 2007 is no longer exists, because they have constructed a 2-storied house here. So the craft is slowly dying down now, and no youngster is ready to take up this craft. And the craft activity, which survived for nearly 5,000 years, is slowly dying out. So they were producing very beautiful ornaments. This is a decorated cornelian bead, which is also known as etched cornelian beads or bleached cornelian beads, which has a typical whitish color decoration, producing a single eye or a double eye or a triple eye or the multiple double-eyed, various patterns they are producing. But the hallmark is this long barrel beads, which formed part of this waistband. This is a waistband for ladies particularly. You can see this is a terracotta figurine which also has this waistband, and one group of family having 8 members, it could have taken at least 4 or 5 months to produce one complete one. So such is the difficulty in producing them. Mastery is required, sophistication is required, practice is required, and that's how the Harappans excelled, and ultimately they might have exported also. They exported this also. We do have evidence of these drill bits, the surface modifications, how they have modified. We documented extensively from different areas of the Dholavira city itself, and also documented the surface modifications, how they are modifying because of the constant drilling, the constant pressure and wear and tear they are acquiring to the drilling process. The tip completely modifies, and they achieves a dimpled surface. And later on, due to the wear and tear, pressure, heat, it breaks down also. So with the wonderful number of earnestate drill bits available at Dholavira, we could document all these. There are other studies which are available, completely mastered by Professor Mark Unayer. These bead impression studies, we put silicone impressions inside the bead and take the impression material outside after 5 or 10 minutes. Then that is viewed under scanning electron microscope to view them under different magnifications and to find the different patterns. So the different patterns, they clearly indicate which material they might have used for perforation. For example, this kind of polished surfaces are created using the earnestite. This kind of surfaces are created because of copper. So all these things really help in understanding the technology of the Harappan bead drilling process itself. And from the later period cultures like at Sanoli, we do find longer beads, but with a different technology altogether. So they were not following the same kind of technology, because the earnestite itself, it was not available, and they were resorting to the copper drills, which is producing a distinct pattern. So the same longer beads, you can see different kind of technologies adopted at Dholavira and a different kind of technology at Sanoli. So trade happened. I mean, I think yesterday also Professor Ajit showed this slide. This is from Dholavira, which is a local product, raw material from Dholavira, which is agate. Interestingly, a finished bead is found from Harappa cemetery, but the raw material is also available from a house in Harappa. So clearly a bead manufacturer was procuring material from Dholavira, manufacturing bead, and ultimately it was reaching as an ornament. So this is a beautiful evidence, and there are several craft activities. This is a very beautiful evidence brought out by the MS University at Bagasra, where large quantities of shell bangles were manufactured apart from fans also. So we do find evidence of how these materials reached the West Asia. Extensive documentation have happened. We do have Mesopotamian records mentioning Dilmun, which is Bahrain, Magan, which is Oman, and Meluha, which is the Harappan domain. Within that Harappan domain, which one is Meluha, we don't know exactly, but we take the entire Harappan region as Meluha as such, and they clearly mention about the products coming from Meluha. What are they? Stones and pearls, carnelians, most of the attestations, lapis and pearl, woods and plants. I mean, more than carnelian. There is one Gizapa Meluha, 12 attestation, Mesu wood, 7. Different animals which were not native to Mesopotamia, they were procuring them. It includes a dog and a cat, metal, copper and gold, and Meluhan style objects. It means the ships of Meluha, they are completely different from Mesopotamia. That's why they mention Meluhan style. And Meluhan style furniture, it means furniture were also supplied by the Harappans. It means that the Meluhans, they were procuring a lot of timber-based products also. So these are some of the stone beads found in the Mesopotamian sites. Wherever you see red color, it's all coming from the Harappan world at that particular point of time, because no other culture was producing this kind of beads. And we do find certain beads reaching inland cities also, like Mari, which is a city in which is a Mesopotamian city in Syria, present Syria, but that is nearly 500 kilometers away from the coastal areas. So the Harappans, they were reaching They might have been trading with the Mesopotamians, and the Mesopotamians in turn, they might have been trading with other parts. So if we plot the occurrences of these kind of most important markers of long barrel beads and these decorated cornelian beads, you can see the widespread occurrence right in the Central Asia, many sites in Iran, Oman, Bahrain, Mesopotamia, Turkey, Troy, and even Greece. There is one decorated cornelian bead from Abydos of Egypt. So the Mesopotamians, they might have traded with these other regions. I mean, scholars don't agree that Harappans might have reached. Harappans were not known to even to the Egyptians, but they might have been trading only with the Mesopotamians. So with this kind of a comprehensive review, I end this talk, and I thank each and everyone, and I also thank my institution IIT Gandhinagar, my parent institution Archaeological Survey of India, Tamil Heritage Trust for giving me an opportunity, and my guru, my mentor, Professor R.S. Bisht, and Professor Mark Kenoyer, Randall Law, and Professor Ajit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We would obviously there are quite a few questions. I would like to sort of let me just also add myself. Gauri, if you want to get into some of the questions and answers, tell me, and I will also add you. Sir, if you were, of the metals that you talked about, you mentioned copper and whatever was added to that. At what point do we start seeing silver and gold in their in the Harappan civilization overall? When do we start seeing them?
Silver and gold mostly appears in the Harappan phase only, that is during the urban phase. I don't remember any evidence before earlier to that. Maybe Dr. Dennyz can correct if I am wrong, but I do remember only during the Harappan phase.
Okay.
Even in the Harappan phase, if you look at the gold ornaments as such, they are very few in number, because only they were actually kind of passed on from generation to generations. That's why we do find very little gold. Even if you find gold ornaments or gold specimen, they are very tiny in nature, and we don't find any larger specimen of Harappan jewelry. Only during the late Harappan period, particularly at Sanoli, we have seen, at Mandi, we have seen a lot of gold being disposed of.
Yeah, because there is a specific question from Samruddhi Ranade, which is exactly this. Do we find any remains of gold and silver in the jewelry making where these metals existent and were used in that period? So you have answered that it is in the Harappan phase. But subsequently, once they started using gold and silver, are they continuing with it? Do we keep finding them till the end of the Harappan phase completely?
Yeah, but very few in number. It's not abundant.
Okay.
Because of its quality of recycling. I mean, even copper, it can be recycled. I mean, I remember Professor Mark Kenoyer mentioning how in the ancient levels of Harappa, you do find copper coming from a particular ore source. But later on, when it becomes more and more populated, when more and more copper is recycled, it is very difficult to even pinpoint the signature of a particular copper ore source. So that's how the metals were extensively recycled.
Okay.
So what about bronze?
Bronze, again, Harappan phase only. I mean, that's why we call it as a Bronze Age civilization, because it's a kind of, again, an added technological advancement, because they're
primarily copper with addition.
Yeah, the two alloying materials.
But even after bronze came, they continue to use copper by itself also.
Yeah, copper only. Copper, most of the things, the copper only.
Yesterday, Dr. Ajit Prasad, he mentioned that they had not found evidence of smelting, but only melting. So I wanted to ask you, you seem to sort of mention that there is a lot of even smelting. Maybe I have not understood properly. So I would like you to expand a little bit upon that.
Yeah, I mentioned about the smelting near the ore sources, not in the towns and the cities. Actually, many scholars now agree that they might have smelted the ore near the ore sources, because it's very difficult to transport such large quantities of ore to the distant towns or cities. So they smelted there. They converted into ingots of specific weights, and then these ingots were traded. So that's why we find ingots in many different towns and cities. Dholavira, we have a lot of ingots. Lothal, we have. Then even in sites outside India, like Susa. Susa has, I showed you a small photograph of ingots from Susa. So these are very easy to trade. Actually, they had fixed weight, right? It may be, just for reference sake, I'm telling, maybe 250 grams, 500 grams, 1 kg, different weights. If somebody wants to purchase them, he might mention, "Acha, give me 1 500 gram ingot." So like that, they were produced in a defined weights, and they were traded. And melting was happening. And then it might have brought to the cities and towns, and melting is comparatively easier when compared to smelting.
Correct. So in there was one major question that I have. You had see all the small beads, drilling. You showed the tools, etc. At the same time, you also showed fairly large blob. It's probably part of a pillar, but also there were slightly odd-shaped large objects which could sit one on top of the other, highly polished. What kind of tools were used to make them?
Actually, they are limestone and sandstones. Okay, they are not so hard.
Difficult. Okay, so it's easier. Okay.
Initial chipping was done using stone hammers only, like what we observed the quarry site near Dholavira. So they might have used various hammer stones to strike, and they obtain a rough shape, and they might have transported to the city of Dholavira, and there they gave the exact geometrical perfection. Okay. Most probably they might have used a lathe, a turning mechanism, in which they might have rubbed, and they might have used harder stones. Harder stones are available near Dholavira on an island known as Banjara Bed. So they might have used harder stones, and also at certain times they might have used metal implements also to give the final shape. But rubbing and garnishing, it gave the highly polished appearance. And ultimately the final polished appearance, it comes from rubbing the stones against even cloth. For the beads also, ultimately they do the final polishing using a cloth only. So different stages of manufacture, different materials might have been used to get that final product.
On the pottery that you showed, there are few people who asked questions about why there is that conical shape, cone at the bottom specifically. How can you, you need then further contraptions to sort of hold them. If the base was flat, then it is much easier to hold. But why even go for something like that? And there is another question related to that. What you are calling as kulhad with an elongated base, were they used for trading or transporting? That base can be used to entrap. I don't know what exactly he means, but there are some questions around that particular shape.
So the larger vessels having a pointed base, they were meant to be fitted into the ground. They will dig a small pit in the ground and they will fit it, right? So it is not a freestanding vessel basically. And
okay. Freely it won't stand anyway. But when you say you are fitting it, you have already made a slot into which it neatly goes and sticks in?
Not necessarily. They have to dig a little bit into the floor level, and they have to fit it inside. There is no need for an exact socket for that particular shape. But for the black slip jars, I mean, they were the containers of the Harappan period. I mean, they were fitted into the deck of the ships actually.
Okay.
So they need a pointed base, and it is very easy to also roll it. I mean, there is no need to carry them all the time, right? It has to be rolled, and they can be transported easily from one place to another. And when they take it inside the ship, it is fitted into the deck. There might have been slots on wood so that it can be fitted exactly, and it is tied to one another so that it may not shake well. But the cooler, they are all very small. I mean, it can be, it's a small, what is a tumbler sort of thing with a pointed base. I mean, we do find these coolers in North India everywhere for lassi. I mean, if you go for a trip shop, you will find this much height cooler.
Yeah, they even drink tea from cooler actually.
That is very small. I mean,
yeah, very small.
This cooler is, I mean, maybe 400, 500 ml it can fit. Choi's cooler, I mean, they have transferred the name into that for everything, but Choi's, they are very small, very small.
Okay. The standard question, is there any evidence of trade with Tamil Nadu?
Yeah, we don't have any kind of trade with Tamil Nadu, because at that particular point of time, if we look into the 3rd millennium BC context, the economy of southern part of India, it was still in the agro-pastoral way of lifestyle. I mean, they were not producing any kind of craft activities so that they can exchange. And we don't have actually the evidence. We don't have the material remains of origin from southern part of India in the Harappan sites. We don't have.
Okay. There's a question from Alan George. He wants to know, do you have evidence of Harappans trading any human or animal figurines with its contemporary cultures, like the Pompeii Lakshmi from later historical times?
Animal figurines, of course, yeah. I mean, because we do have references from the cuneiform records.
Okay. You have only found records, or actual figurines themselves have been located?
Actual figurines we don't have. Maybe Dr. Dennyz may correct.
There are 2 figurines from Nippur in Mesopotamia, which are typical Harappan puppets, and the composite Harappan puppets, and they were analyzed. The clay was analyzed, and the result made locally in Harappan style, which is something I will discuss more extensively. I will not actually discuss these figurines, but the model of producing Harappan style objects with local materials and techniques in my presentation.
Okay. It means Harappans were living there and they were producing the toys, or
which is more interesting. So it's not only transportation of goods, but migration of labor.
Yeah, labor and
producing goods
not laborers per se. I mean, not laborers we can say. I mean, it is the Harappans who are migrating there and settling there for economic benefits
and adapting to that environment to produce. From their native climate, they adapted to that.
Yeah, we are expert in that.
Right. So in terms of the pottery, particularly the range of pottery that you showed, right? Now, pottery has been found all over, the much wider, let's say, the larger Asia and Europe, across multiple cultures, right? Now, how distinct were the Harappan IVC pottery vis-a-vis from some of the other cultures? In terms of, again, one is the look and feel, the other is the technology aspect of it. Anything that you can mention there?
Mostly the look and feel, and I told you the forms, shapes, the decorations, they are all unique to the Harappan culture. So even from a distance, one can say, a trained Harappan expert, one can say, yeah, this is from the Harappan culture. So that's how they are so unique. I mean, they are so unique from the other contemporary cultures.
Okay.
So you said about the extensive excavations at Mehergarh, and you said it's about 8th millennium. Is that one of the oldest sites where you've discovered so many objects?
It is the oldest site. I mean, it is the
oldest.
Yeah, in the South Asian context, it is the oldest site where we have a continuous a sequence of cultures, origin of the settling, earliest evidence for a settling of humans there, and domestication of plants and animals, and a continuous evolution of various
Arts
other.
and crafts also.
Yeah.
Arts and crafts and their industry and everything.
Again, going back to the earlier, the large pointed vessels pointed at the bottom, Anita wants to know whether boats which were used to transport, they had a platform with such holes into which these pointed pots could be fitted in. And if so, have you found any evidence? I think evidence is likely to be difficult because they are made of wood. And
yeah. We don't have evidence. We do have only two models, one from Lothal and one from Harappa, and some carvings on steatite from Mohenjo-daro. But we don't have the physical evidence. But we do have the inscriptional evidence from the Mesopotamian sources, cuneiform sources. They are telling ships of Meluhan style. One is ship, Meluhan style. It means they are completely different from the local manufacturing technique, which is reed. They were making reed boards and plastering them or covering them with bitumen. But the Meluhan types might have been made of timber. So that could be a major difference, because they are also mentioning about furniture of Meluhan style. It means they are getting some materials like furniture also from the Harappan region. So they might have been very good experts in manufacturing these kind of ships and furniture also.
So you think wood was a common raw material there? Because you were talking about those wooden pillars and all also over the base,
definitely, no? Definitely, wood was used extensively. Even in Mohenjo-daro, there is one house where the even the timber roofing is also found. The wooden beams and cross beams, they have been found partly. So they were using it for roof also. Doors, windows, furnitures, all those things.
And
even
it was locally sourced.
Locally?
It was locally sourced?
Locally, no. Some came from outside. Right? Outside means from the Himalayan region. From Harappa, they have found the evidence of Devdar. Devdar or cedar, one type of cedar wood that came from the Himalayan region, because it is grown only in altitudes of 2000 meter and above. So for the Harappa, the one of the burials, it had a coffin made of the Devdar wood.
Okay. What kind of internal, Pradosh Biswas wants to know, what kind of transportation was happening inland? Because yesterday's presentation, we heard that there was now or little evidence of horses, donkeys, camels, or the double-humped camel. Then what were the primary drought animals and to carry vehicles forward?
Oxen driven carriage vehicles, they were the most common, and we do have plentiful of models. Single person driven chariots. I mean it is a chariot, because there are very beautiful clay figurines from Harappa which clearly shows a single driven carriage vehicle, definitely a chariot. There are hollow framed vehicle models which clearly indicate for a larger group. I mean, some group can travel. Even they had a canopy, provision for canopy, and all these things were there. And definitely they were using multiple carriage vehicles driven by oxen.
Okay, wonderful. You have any other questions, Gauri?
No,
Otherwise,
I think Dr. Dennyz, if he has any. Dr.
Uh,
Dennyz, do you have any questions?
Wonderful.
No, I don't have question, but I would like to congratulate with Prabhakar for his amazing presentation.
Thank you.
Very comprehensive, very update. And thank you so much. So I really enjoyed and I learned a lot of things. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Prabhakar. That was really eye-opening. There's so much. Again, we are getting so much of information over a short period of time, from yesterday, today, and going to continue. And we have to really process all of them to form a much better understanding of this very exciting civilization. Over to you, Gauri. Wrap up and then introduction. of the next speaker. Thank you.
Dr. Prabhakar, that was an excellent lecture, an exhilarating talk. And as Badri said, we are a little spellbound now, I think. We need to assimilate all that we are learning. Okay, so without much ado, we'll move on to the second talk. Now, this is a recorded talk by Dr. Dennyz Frenez on Harappan trade with Central and Western Asia, early global marketing strategy. Dr. Frenez will be present for the question and answer session at the end of the recording. So all of you can pose your questions freely. Only the main session is recorded. From the 3rd millennium BC, Harappan merchants and craftspeople were instrumental in defining, promoting, and possibly regulating long-distance cross-cultural trade exchanges throughout Western Asia. In fact, Harappan-related artifacts have been found over a large ecumene encompassing Central Asia, Iranian Plateau, Mesopotamia, Northern Levant, the Persian Gulf, and the Oman Peninsula. In contrast, only a handful of exotic trade tools and commodities have been found at Harappan sites in the greater Indus Valley. Analytical techniques and technological studies have demonstrated that the success of the Harappan trade in Western Asia did not depend solely on the dynamic entrepreneurship of Indus merchants and the exotic commodities they offered. Specific products were in fact proactively designed and manufactured in the Indus Valley to fulfill the particular requests of foreign markets. In fact, Harappan craftspeople moved beyond their native cultural sphere, applying their manufacturing skills to adapt Harappan productions to the local tastes and rework indigenous models. In his presentation, Dr. Frenez discusses about how the movement of Harappan merchants and craftspeople across Central and Western Asia eventually led to the emergence of hybrid productions, technological transfer, and cultural blending. Further, he says this historical phenomena has been driven by a conscious attempt from the Indus Valley side to implement and coordinate a super regional marketing strategy with a global vision. Dr. Dennyz Frenez has a doctorate in prehistory and protohistory of Asia and is currently researching about commercial and cross-cultural interactions between urban-level societies in South and Western Asia during the Bronze Age, with a particular focus on the Greater Indus Valley and Eastern Arabia. His research applies a wide range of theoretical and methodological approaches, including the study of ancient administrative systems, traditional technologies, iconographies, and art styles, along with the socio-economic and political systems prevalent then. Dr. Frenez has directed archaeological excavations in India and Oman, apart from working with museums and expeditions in India, Oman, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. He teaches graduate and postgraduate courses about the Indus civilization at the University of Padua, Italy, and at IIT Gandhinagar, India. He has published several edited books and numerous scholarly papers in peer-reviewed journals. Currently, he is also a consultant for archaeology and heritage at the Ministry of Heritage and Tourism of the Sultanate of Oman. Over to you, Badri, to start the talk.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone, and many thanks for attending my lecture at the Indology Festival 2024, dedicated to the 100-year anniversary of the announcement of the discovery of the Indus civilization. I am very honored to be here today, and I want to deeply thank the Tamil Heritage Trust and the organizers of this event, in particular Shyam Raman and Kishore Mahadevan. I would also like to thank the Ministry of Heritage and Tourism of Oman, for which I work as the advisor for archaeology, the University of Bologna and the University of Padua in Italy, which support my research, and all the institutions and colleagues who made this research possible, in particular Mark Neuer of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Although I have been working mainly in Oman for some years now, My main research focus has always been the Indus civilization. I've been researching various aspects of its craft tradition, administrative organization, and external trade for nearly 20 years now. Today, I will combine these topics by presenting some exceptional cases that shed light on the organization of Indus external trade. My goal today is to show how the Indus socioeconomic entities organizing external trade implemented a coordinated supra-regional marketing strategy with a global vision in a seminal prototypical form. In fact, as I will discuss at the end of this presentation, I propose that the Indus civilization eventually introduced a marketing strategy for external trade that was based on the founding principles of what is now called localization. The Indus, or Harappan civilization, developed along the Indus River basin and its neighboring regions of present-day Pakistan and northwestern India between about 2600 and 1900 BCE. The study of interactions between the Indus Valley and other regions of Western and Central Asia has played a central role in the research on the Indus civilization from its very beginning. In fact, the prehistoric dating of this cultural complex was first inferred based on parallels between seals from Harappa and Mohenjo-daro and similar artifacts found in Iran and Mesopotamia. Mortimer Wheeler even proposed that the Indus civilization had to be interpreted as a secondary phenomenon deeply influenced by more advanced Western civilizations. It is now commonly accepted instead that the development of this urban phenomenon in the second half of the 3rd millennium BCE represented only the apex of an independent cultural tradition with deep roots dating back to the local Neolithic in the 7th millennium BCE. The Indus civilization, or more precisely the integration era of the Indus tradition, was in fact the result of a long process of coherent selection, diffusion, assimilation, and eventual crystallization of cultural traits from different regional cultures spread over a vast and highly differentiated territory, not only culturally, but also in terms of landscape, environment, and climate. Long-distance trade was established in the Indus Valley during the Neolithic period. Objects made from exotic materials obtained from remote mountains and coastal areas were in fact interred with the deceased to symbolize their wealth and the increase in socioeconomic hierarchy. According to a seminal research by Massimo Vidale and Heather Miller, based on projecting ethnographic and anthropological data into the archaeological dimension, low technological investment in manufacturing processes, opposed to high investment in the acquisition of raw materials, characterized society with a tribe of chieftain-like social organization, in which the political power was exercised through the establishment and maintenance of such a political and economic networks among separate communities. Long-distance trade was therefore a fundamental component of the Neolithization process in the Greater Indus Valley. The so-called regionalization era was marked by the emergence of increasingly large interaction spheres, leading to the formation in the late 4th millennium BC of highly structured interregional exchange network encompassing the entire Indus basin. This network fostered the selection, synthesis, and eventual crystallization of specific cultural traits from different regional cultures that formed the basis of the Indus phenomenon during the subsequent Increation era. The 3rd millennium also saw the beginning of external cross-cultural trade in neighboring foreign regions, where reciprocal exchange and down-the-line trade characterized the regional dimension. More direct commercial exchanges ever exist at the distant level. Discovery of numerous early seals in East Iran and Central Asia indicates, in fact, the existence of more coordinated exchange strategies along the routes between the Indus Valley regions. hand of been found in valleys to return evidence in
There seems to be some audio problems, which
Yes. Do you want me to share the presentation from my computer? I can share the PowerPoint that is lighter than the video, maybe.
no, the bandwidth is not the issue. Little surprised as to why this is the case. I don't think there's any problem with the bandwidth itself. Now there is completely no audio. Let me just give me a minute. I will just
Okay.
stop this and replay this. Let me play this again 1 second.
raw materials from the greater Indus Valley and Indus-style artifacts are...
Shall I just go back a little bit so that it continues? I'll go a little bit back. And let's see if it works out.
The discovery of numerous early Indus seals in eastern Iran and Central Asia indicates, in fact, the existence of more coordinated exchange strategies along the land routes between the Indus Valley and these regions. In the second half of the 3rd millennium BC, the Indus centers played a central role in defining, promoting, and possibly regulating cross-cultural trade exchanges throughout Western and Central Asia, with Indus artifacts at one time reaching as far as the southern Levant and the Nile Valley, Eastern Mediterranean, Anatolia, and the Caucasus. On the contrary, only a handful of foreign objects have been found in the Indus Valley so far. I will return on this evidence in the conclusions. By the mid-3rd millennium, still poorly understood innovation in seagoing vessel technology opened up the possibility of establishing also seasonal maritime routes towards southeastern Iran, eastern Arabia and the Gulf, and southern Mesopotamia, fostering long-distance trade on a larger scale. When Sargon claimed that ships of Melucca had docked at Akkad, the maritime routes across the Arabian Sea must have already been sailed with great confidence. Indus-type objects and raw materials, in fact, began to appear regularly in southeastern Arabia and Mesopotamia as early as 2500 BC, predating the foundation of the Akkadian Empire by more than 1 century. According to Julian Reed, while trade across the Persian Gulf in the early dynastic period must have been in the hands of the local communities, Indus merchants became soon dominant in the region. Raw materials from the greater Indus Valley and Indus-style artifacts are widely documented in early dynastic context. In particular, you can see here 2 cylinder seals found in early dynastic 3A tombs in the royal cemetery of Ur, both carved from the columella of a Turbinella pirum, a large gastropod endemic to the coastal water of Makran, the Sommiani Bay, and Gujarat, which was largely exploited in the Indus civilization for making bangles. In fact, Turbinella pirum is the only shell with a columella thick enough to allow carving of comparable large cylinder seals. The most common Indus products found in early dynastic context is carnelian beads. In particular, the so-called itch beads, bleach-decorated carnelian beads made in the Indus cultural sphere by heat-treating small carnelian beads previously decorated with an alkaline glue obtained from the fruit of wild copper tree. In addition to the bleach beads, early dynastic contexts also included a considerable number of long and very long Indus-style biconical beads in carnelian, a craft production exclusive to the Indus civilization that involved the exploitation of exceptionally long carnelian nodules only available in Gujarat and the use of sets of special constricted cylindrical drills for their perforation. Interestingly, in addition to pure Indus-style carnelian beads, early dynastic tombs also contain examples of local-style beads, like this large-faceted biconical bead, which were exceptionally made from carnelian rather than the use of lapis lazuli or gold. Both Indus and local-style carnelian beads have been found to be perforated using Indus-type constricted cylindrical drills made from a hard stone called ernestite, in honor of Ernest Mackay, who first studied their use. As far as we know to date, although its composition and possible treatment remain to be defined and no source has been located yet, ernestite was more likely obtained in Gujarat. Because of the similar hardness of the drills and the stones to be perforated, Indus constricted cylindrical drills produce a distinctively smooth surface around the drill hole, which is well visible under ACM and can be considered highly diagnostic of this drilling technique. The use of a series of drills of decreasing diameter to perforate each of these beads can also be inferred from the typical stepped drill holes. All considered, it has been proposed that, in parallel with the importation of finished carnelian beads from the Indus Valley, Indus-trained craftspeople were either proactively designing and producing Mesopotamian-style beads in the Indus Valley exclusively for export, or more likely that they moved to Mesopotamia where they work exotic materials by applying their distinct skills to local models to meet the taste of the local elites. Both scenarios are plausible in the complex framework of Indus external trade. In fact, there is no evidence of products within Indus Valley only to be exported to foreign markets, as well as of specialized Indus craftspeople acting outside their native cultural sphere to design local productions. The success of Central Asia was not only based on the Indus commodity and study scholars that circulation not the
Sorry, again, the audio seems to have some problem. Just give me a minute. I'll restart. My apologies.
I'm sorry for the video. I wasn't sure until the very end if I was here today or not. So the video is okay. I think it's some just streaming problems.
The case of our such we work with the
Sorry, just give me 1 minute. Try. There'll be a little interruption from my side. I will fix this. Just give me a minute. And if you are removed from Zoom, just please rejoin. I'll get this one sorted out. Yeah.
Tradition between 2300 and 1700 BC.
Is audio not on at all?
No, not coming right now.
Yeah.
Also, I think we have to go back a little.
In the Bronze Age.
Yeah, this is completely strange. Sorry.
Exploited since the 7th millennium BC. The so-called Oxus civilization, after the Greek name of the Amudavia River, is also known as the Bactria-Marjana Archaeological Complex, or BMAC. The Oxus civilization include large urban centers and rural settlements that flourished from a local tradition between 2300 and 1700 BC. The urban centers of the Oxus civilization developed intense commercial and cultural exchanges with the neighboring regions of the Indus Valley and the Iranian Plateau, but also with Mesopotamia, the Persian Gulf and Eastern Arabia, Syria, and Anatolia. The existence in the mountains of Central Asia of abundant sources of precious stones and minerals that were not present in the alluvial basins of the great rivers, such as lapis lazuli, turquoise, tin, and silver, was probably the main reason for the emergence and intensification of trade with Central Asia in the Bronze Age. Gunur Tepe is the largest of all ancient settlements uncovered in the Endoraic fan of the Murghab River in southern Turkmenistan. The site encompasses an area of about 55 hectares and consists of different interconnected archaeological areas, which, according to Victor Sarianidi, all approximately dates between about 2200 and 1700 BC. Objects in ivory of Asian elephant were found on the Monumental Palace and the so-called Royal Necropolis in Gunur North, and in tombs of the large necropolis to the west, which extended for 10 hectares and count several hundreds of underground tombs. The possibility of compiling a comprehensive list of artifacts possibly imported to Gunur Tepe from the Indus Valley or somewhat related to different Indus iconographies and productions is presently limited by the absence of a complete inventory and systematic publication of the findings, as well as for the lack of any physical and chemical analysis useful to determine the origin of the specific classes of materials. A few ceramic containers and the typical quail stamp seals with the image of an elephant carved below an inscription made of 8 Indus signs can be positively related to the production of the Indus Valley. Other imports from the Indus Valley include bleach and long carnelian beads, objects in faience, and a few substance and faience vessels with motifs of the Indus iconography. More complex is the interpretation of one anthropomorphic and one theriomorphic sculptures that have direct parallels at Indus sites. In fact, the unfinished lower fragment of a kneeling figure made of soapstone found at Gunur North closely resembles for posture and style the series of kneeling men found at Mohenjo-Daro, including the famous priest king, and specimens from Dolavira, as well as 2 stone heads found in the Helmand Basin. These statues has also clear affinity with the figures embossed on silver vessels from plundered graves in Bactria. Moreover, the statue of a squatting ram used to support the head of a dead has been found in a grave at Gunur, and closely resembles a group of similar sculptures found in the upper levels of Mohenjo-Daro. The evidence for the production of such statues at Gunur Tepe may suggest the presence of an intercultural sphere of shared beliefs that encompass Central Asia, Eastern Iran, Baluchistan, and the southern basins of the Indus River, more than a simple exchange of finished goods. Beside the evident affinities between these human and animal sculptures, there is little evidence for the presence of actual imports from Central Asia and Indus South. They mainly consist of metal and stone stills and their impression on clay, and other small finds. The artifacts in Ivory of Indian elephant found at south of the Indus Valley were usually simplistically considered evidence for the mere import
I'm so sorry. I think the video has to be restarted again.
Examination of ivory found at Gunur, it's instead indication for a more.
What would you suggest?
If you want, I can try to share the video or the screen from my computer. Maybe we can try.
Sure, if you could go to the same location, this
Yes, no problem.
screen. I will stop. You please
because I have the PowerPoint. Maybe it's more. It's easy to stream than the video.
Only, you want to give your explanation on top, or you want to play the video?
No problem.
Okay. Yeah, then I will stop sharing.
We are here. Yes. Stop.
Sorry about this. I don't know. The video is coming through fine, but the audio seems to have some problems.
So this one here.
Beside the evident affinities between these human and animal sculptures, there is little evidence for the presence of actual imports from Central Asia and Indus South. They mainly consist of metal and stone seals and their impression on clay, and a few other small finds. The artifacts in ivory of Indian elephant found at sites out of the Indus Valley were usually simplistically considered evidence for the mere import of finished items. The systematic examination of the ivories found at Gunur Tepe provides instead indication for a more complex model of production and exchange of these precious objects. The main categories of objects made of ivory found at Gunur Tepe and also at Indus sites are primarily related to personal care and gaming or divination. At Gunur, Saryanidi found two ivory combs. Ivory combs are frequent at Indus sites, but are also found in Eastern Arabia. Remarkably, an ivory comb with the later millennium BC collected grave of Tel Abrak was decorated with a floral motif found also on vessels at Gunur, suggesting that the object was made or redecorated in Central Asia. A large spatula, possibly used for cosmetic makeup or mixing liquids or powder, was manufactured following local norms. Its long handle was shaped and finally decorated in bas reliefs on both sides with a winged griffin and devouring a cow. This motif is still parallels in the mosaic composition that decorated several grave chambers in the Gunur necropolis. At both Indus sites and Gunur Tepe, a significant number of artifacts made from ivory was connected with practices of gaming and or ritual divination. The distinction between gaming and gambling for amusement and ritual divination to predict the future or discriminate between different possibilities is very elusive, since it's basically due to the agents that affect the results, the chance for gaming, and the intervention of sentient supernatural or divine entities in the case for divination. The sets of objects used to perform games or rituals might be indeed very similar to different periods and cultures. Two classes of objects in ivory found at Tibet are certainly related to games. gaming boards, and dice. Serenity found what he interpreted to be leads covering the caskets made of hundreds of short segments, triangles, drops, petal-likes, and wood-shaped inlays in ivory. Once discovered, the inlays still had their original arrangement, and there is no doubt that they were part of a typical game board used for the so-called game of the 20 squares in its early configuration, similar to the ones from the Royal Cemetery of Lourdes and Charizot. This type of game board is quite rare in its size, and only two broken boards have been found so far, one at Dolovira and another broken fragment at Mohenjo-Daro. Gaming boards carved into stones or made of white clay have been found at many sites, but they are more similar to the ones still used for the so-called game of the nine men. A careful examination of all inlays revealed that a few of them retain on the back still partial traces of dotted circle motifs. Evidently, they were cut out from larger decorated objects and testify to the reworking of ivory objects in their maximum possible exploitation of this very precious and rare organic material. Different types of dies were properly used with these game boards, from split reeds, cowrie shell, knuckle bones, cubical dies, etc. Finely carved stick dies in stone, wood, and also ivory have been found at sites across the entire Middle Asia, including the Indus Valley and Central Asia. A very standardized type of four-sided stick dies, with triangular section, has been found at several sites in Central Asia, mainly at Altingu Tepe and Gunung Tepe. These dies have all the same motifs on the four sides. Three sides are dotted circle motifs, incremental for 1 to 3, while the fourths alternate odd series, 5 or more often 7 of transversal lines and versatile type process. Thick dies in ivory, identical to the ones on the Kunur, were also used at the site of Altin Tepe, where they have been found in connection with quadrangular and round plaquettes also in ivory. Similar plaquettes of about the same average size of 4 to 5 centimeters, decorated with dotted circle motifs, areas of oblique lines at each corner of the patterns, also occur at Gunung Tepe and at Indus sites, that might be possibly used as gaming pieces. Other slightly larger and thicker round discs from cumulative context at Kunur have recurring motifs, including scorpions and composition of arch-shaped and other geometric patterns. There have been gaming pieces as well, but also ritual objects. They were also manufactured in a variety of local redstones. The collection of ivory artifacts found at Gunur includes other exceptional pieces that have no equivalents in the ivory production of the Indus civilization, but that have strong connection to the art tradition of Central Asia and Marjana in particular. In summary, the detailed study of the artifacts made from ivory of Indian elephant found at Gunur Tepe shows stylistic independency from the contemporaneous production in ivory in the Indus Valley, suggesting local manufacturing and the reworking of ivory objects according to the taste and needs of the local elite. The complete reconstruction of the different processes of manufacturing and trade of these objects is possibly impossible on the basis of available data, but we can try to define some basic points to propose a viable hypothesis. The ultimate question that touches all the main points of this research is about defining who has manufactured these objects, who had the skills to transform an exotic and very precious raw material to produce artifacts following the local taste of Central Asian elites. Ivory carvers that specifically moved to Central Asia and worked as residents or itinerant ivory craftsmen, or local craftsmen trained in ivory carving. Based on historical and ethnographic evidence, the manufacturing of ivory requires specific skills, mainly for the cutting of the elephant tusk, in order to maximize the size of the pieces and obtain particular shapes. Even considering the possible trade of entire tasks, their cutting may have been hardly done by people that had no familiarity with the physiology of elephant tusks, mainly if we consider that several objects found at Gunur are quite large in size. The objects made from ivory of Indian elephant found at Gunur today may have been produced at Indus size and then somehow traded to sites in Central Asia as finished objects. This might be the case of some of them, like the tombs, although there is evidence for tombs in wood of the same type from contemporaneous sites in Iran and Afghanistan, and for tombs in ivory made or at least decorated in Central Asia. However, considering that most of these objects were carved following specific local style and reproducing local motifs, that a few of them show traces of rework and others have no parallel at any site in the Indus Valley, but were found almost identical at various sites in Marjana, there is a concrete possibility that the last manufacturing stages that produce these objects were performed at sites in southern Turkmenistan, possibly at Gunur itself, by specialized Indus or Indus-trained itinerant ivory carvers, a production and trade model that is also documented in later historical periods. Let's now change geographical location and expand the variety of objects considered. Extremely informative data about the organization of the external trade has been recently obtained in southeastern Arabia, namely northern Oman and the United Arab Emirates. In this region, Indus materials are almost ubiquitous at sites dating to the second half of the third millennium, both settlements and tombs. Indus pottery, in particular, is very common. Most likely, given the super arid environment in this region, edible commodities account for a much larger share of the imports from the Indus Valley than in regions with higher and more diversified food productions. Regardless of the reason why pottery was found in such large quantities, it is important to point here that several such vessels were found to be produced in Arabia using local clays. This evidence was initially explained with the adoption of new culinary habits by the local communities, inspired by contacts with Indus merchants along the coast. At the same time, the large number of Indus storage jars found at Middle sites were instead explained with their common uses in the local exchange network. Indeed, recent excavation in interior Oman have made it possible to determine that a significant number of Indus pottery vessels, including large storage jars and cooking pots, were made directly inland with local clays, but applying complex Indus techniques. This discovery led us to analyze this collection more closely. In addition to several Indus-style carnelian beads, all made from Gujarati carnelian and all drilled using Indus techniques, we found a typical Indus seal with an inscription in Indus signs carved above an Indian bison. This seal was found to be made in interior Oman by a seal maker that used Indus techniques for carving a local stone to represent an individual linked to Indus external trade. Extremely significant is the discovery at the same site of Salut of two fragments of a local jar, which, before being fired, had been stamped twice with the same tablet with an Indus motif and Indus writing sign. So, based on the identification of locally made Indus products of no commercial value but used in daily life activities, such as the cooking pots and terracotta toys, and the local use of Indus family practices, we made the assumption that small groups of Indus natives, including both merchants and craft people, were settled with their families in interior Oman to trade directly with the socioeconomic and political entities that control the extraction and first processing of copper and minerals and some prized rock. extraordinary discoveries confirm the particular interest of the Indus merchant in southeastern Arabia. Small vessels with painted Indus motifs, locally called Indus bottles, which are found exclusively in tombs in southeastern Arabia, despite having no comparisons in the Indus Valley, were found to have been made in sea. From being the best candidate for a local production inspired.
We don't see your video.
We are now an exceptional example of a skilled production, practically designed and manufactured in the Indus Valley to be marketed.
You don't see it?
Yeah, I only see your face. Video screen has
When did it stop?
just now.
Okay. Let's.
What are extraordinary
Now,
discoveries
I can
confirm
hear your audio, but not the
Indus
video.
merchant in
I
southeastern
can't see
Arabia.
I can't see the screen.
Patri, I can see it.
You can?
Yeah.
I will share it again.
And now I can see.
What are extraordinary discoveries confirm the particular interest of the Indus merchant in southeastern Arabia. Small vessels with painted Indus motifs, locally called Indus bottles, which are found exclusively in tombs in southeastern Arabia, despite having no comparisons in the Indus Valley, were found to have been made in sea. From being the best candidate for a local production inspired by Indus models, we are now an exceptional example of a skilled production practically designed and manufactured in the Indus Valley to be marketed in a specific foreign region. We leave Arabia with what I believe is the most exciting discovery describing cross-cultural exchange in Western Asia. The recent excavation of collective tomb at Dahua, about 20 kilometers inland from Sohar, has yielded several Indus bottles, but also a few extremely rare silver jewels. I have had the privilege to document them, and I immediately noticed a seal ring with an Indian bison engraved in Indus style. To allow you to understand the relevance of this discovery, I wish now to present some features of Indus seals. Standard Indus seals were square stems, nearly always carved from steatite, that was then eaten to be whitened and hardened, with a standing male animal, real or mythological, but exceptionally anthropomorphic figures or rituals always carved below a sequence of Indus signs. The frequency of these iconographies varies slightly from side to side. However, the so-called unicorn is always and by far the most represented. I believe that seals in the Indus civilization appear to be so conceptually standardized because their production and use were regulated by a set of prescriptions issued by a still undefined authority of economic and or political power, which had to be strictly observed to produce seals authorized to identify specific administrative figures within a highly structured socio-economic system. You can therefore assume that Indus seal represented different executive roles that cooperated with the same bureaucratic structure rather than economically competing clans or individuals. The next question is obvious. What can we say about this work? Observing its exceptionally high frequency on Indus seals found in Western and Central Asia, Massimo Vidale proposed that the Indian bison, or short-horned bull, was a symbol of Indus merchants involved in external trade. Following the same concept, Vidal and I proposed that the unicorn, the most common motif in all Indus sites, may have represented the most numerous bureaucrats in an early urban context, like small-scale accountants, master recording, and taxation. We can now go back to our silver ring with the Indian bison found at Dahua in northern Oman. Now, we can say that it was made to be used by an individual linked to Indus external trade. However, although this ring type is quite unique in the 30 band, the other silver our colleague Randall Lowe from the University of Wisconsin-Madison was therefore entrusted to analyze the composition of all silvers from Dagua and link them to specific geographical sources. To our surprise, they were all found to source from the exact same deposit in Anatolia that was exploited to make silver artifacts excavated at Millennium sites in Mesopotamia. So this seal ring was commissioned by an individual linked to Indus external trade who operated in southern Mesopotamia, where these objects were made using silver obtained from Anatolia in present-day Turkey. We cannot say whether this person traveled to Oman at some point and was eventually buried in a local tomb, or whether only the Jews were free. Anyhow, this discovery illustrates the complexity of cross-cultural interaction throughout Western Central Asia during the 3rd millennium BC. Let's now examine an artifact type that has a central role in the organization of Indus external trade, Indus type and Indus-related seal. We have already discussed Vidal's contribution to identify the Indian bison as the symbol of Indus merchants acting in Central and Western Asia. Research by Stefan Lautzen has provided critical information not only on the use of Indus-related seals outside the Indus Valley, but also on their production. Through quantitative analysis of the morphological features of the so-called Gulf-type round seals, an Indus-related seal type that was introduced from Western and Central Asia in the last centuries of the 4th millennium BCE, Stefan defined 4 major variants with a strong regional consistency. This pattern made me propose that they were carved locally by Indus-trained seal carvers. Other studies have also considered the inscriptions in Indus writing signs engraved on these seals. According to Ascough-Parpola, based on statistical analysis, the inscription on the Gulf-type seals from the Indus Valley, Batuan and Iran, and one from Mesopotamia, represented the same language encoded in the Indus Valley. The inscriptions on the other Indus-inscribed seals from Mesopotamia and Arabia instead encoded a different language or languages, which, based on the local onomastic, could have been Amorite. The need to adapt the Indus script to the local onomastic is possibly also reflected in the high occurrence in such non-Indus inscription of the Indus so-called man and twin signs. According to Vidal, these signs may have been used to indicate patronymics, a characteristic of the inscription on cylinder seal. Three exceptional Indus-related seals with cuneiform inscriptions provide important insights into this method. In 2 of them, the cuneiform inscription was engraved in horizontal lines as in the Indus seals, rather than in vertical columns as customary for cuneiform in this period. In addition, while the Indus animals were carved respecting the standard proportion of Indus iconography, several cuneiform signs show minor inaccuracies, may indicate that they were made in Mesopotamia by Indus-trained seal carvers. The inscriptions in the translation by Gianni Marchesi reported 2 typical Sumerian names for the first seal on the top, a name that is neither Sumerian nor Akkadian, probably the local phonetic transcription of an Indus name, 2 Akkadian names for the seal owner and his father, and a name, again neither Sumerian nor Akkadian, for the grandfather. A single name, Mashiri or Gashiri, the transcription for François de Sèvres, is engraved in linear lamite on a round seal with an Indian bison found in western Iran. Two certainly Indus-derived names, Nanasa and Tamara, are mentioned in a cuneiform tablet from the Wood-Tree periods. These 2 individuals were royal slaves employed in Mesopotamia to raise ivory wild goats. We submitted this list to experts in ancient languages, although mostly agreed that these names could have originated the same linguistic tradition. They remarked what's in common. We must consider, in fact, apart from the endless example of foreign names deliberately adapted to the local onomastics, also to the difficulty of transcribing a personal name using a different language and writing system. To take just one example, the name of the Mauryan Emperor Chandragupta was transcribed in Greek as Sandrokotos. As we already briefly mentioned, most of the Indus-related seals found in Western Asia seems to have been made locally, not in the Indus Valley, but according to the Indus seal-making tradition. We have already discussed the Gulf seals and the Indus seal from Salut, but this seems also the case with the cylindral seal in THTI found at Susa, Western Iran, which depicts a short-horned bull with an oddly elongated body, as it was carved by a seal maker trained to make stamped seals. This cylinder seal from Konar Sandal South, the Jiroft province of southeastern Iran, shows instead the linear translation in local style of a typical Indus iconography. It was carved from a local marble, but the coherent adaptation of a complex Indus iconography to a local seal type suggests that its iconographic meaning was indicated by an individual with an intimate understanding of the original Indus motif. Two prismatic seals in chloride from Eastern Arabia and several cylindral seals from Mesopotamia and Central Asia, made of I5 steatite, also re-elaborated and combined Indus and local motifs carved in Indus style to create complex narrative seals. Now, before I conclude my presentation, I would like to discuss the meaning of two words: globalization and localization. These two terms have been recently introduced and are increasingly used in theoretical debate on pre-modern and ancient societies to describe transcultural interaction modes and their long-term socioeconomic and cultural outcomes. Globalization and localization seems almost interchangeable. In reality, they convey two significantly different, somehow antithetical meanings. Globalization, in fact, commonly refers to how the same commodities and services are traded worldwide, rather than to the objects of trade themselves, which should be as standardized as possible. On the other hand, localization refers to the commodities that are proactively produced to be traded in a specific foreign market. In particular, it describes a product or a service originally introduced in a domestic market and how it's modified to meet the needs of a foreign market. Localization is essentially doing business on a global scale, but conforming to the different local traditions. So, while globalization leads to the standardization of products and services, localization tends to introduce numerous local variants of an original model. Here you see the symbol of localization, a company that made its fortune on a specific product and now it changed its proposal to commercially penetrate a foreign market with an entirely different cultural tradition. A recent publication proposed that in pre-modern societies, globalization practices facilitated the movement of goods, people, and ideas, leading to profound changes in the interconnected society. In this process, new ideas, technologies, and objectives were created. Based on this quite generic definition, it is undeniable that during the third millennium, the entire region from the greater Indus Valley to the Nile and from southern Arabia to Central Asia experienced globalizing phenomena. What is more difficult to say is whether these processes were conscious attempts to create a globalized world, or rather the result of the unilateral but typical implementation of local production and marketing strategies. Although certainly partial and discontinuous in time and space, the complex and multifaceted archaeological record describing Indus external trade activities seems to describe a deliberate and coordinated effort by yet undefined socio-economic entities to implement a supraregional marketing strategy with an observable localizing situ. Today, in fact, we have seen that the success of Indus merchants in Western and Central Asia was not only due to the exotic commodities they offered. Instead, I have presented clear evidence of the production, either in the Indus Valley or directly abroad, of artifacts practically designed to meet the unique tastes of specific foreign markets. This may also be the reason why there are a few foreign commodities in the Indus Valley. It was not the objects that were exchanged, but the people who move abroad. We have also seen how Indus merchants conform to different administrative traditions by commissioning seals inspired to the Indus tradition, but made abroad from local raw materials, often translating original Indus motifs into local styles. In exceptional cases, local scripts were also used to transcribe original Indus names. This trend eventually led to the sudden and almost simultaneous introduction of standardized trade tools specifically conceived for external trade. In my opinion, these are all attestations of a conscious effort to implement a supraregional coordinated or centralized marketing strategy with a global vision. As I have already mentioned, this is possibly one of the reasons, if not the main reason, for the extremely rare occurrence of culturally alien objects at sites in the greater Indus Valley. In fact, if production and exchange were in part localized in foreign contexts, the arrival of foreign products in the Indus Valley would have been evidently extremely reduced. To conclude, from where did this concept of a coordinated supraregional marketing strategy with a local vision emerge? I believe that this coordinated approach to long-distance cross-cultural trade may have derived from the attempt at replicating, on a different scale and certainly with a different target, the process of interregional exchange that between the end of the 4th and the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC led to the emergence of the industrialization, the cultural and commercial interaction and eventual convergence of the different regional cultures that populated the greater Indus Valley. This concludes my presentation. So thank you very much for your kind attention, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Would you like to close the screen so we can have yes, to our viewers, really sorry, series of mishaps with the audio video streaming. It's very strange. Somehow it was letting the video through and affecting audio. Very strange. Apologies also to you, Professor Frenez. I don't know.
No problem. We made it.
Yeah. So the thing is, you have very innovative. This is innovative in the sense that to somebody like me, very amateur, interested person. Now, let me break it up in smaller questions. So is your contention that this idea of, at that particular point in time, globalizing the trade was a brainchild of Harappan civilization, that nobody was really looking at a wider trade before that, and there was a lot of localization, only local trade, but then suddenly this culture emerged?
No. There was long distance trade in all cultures.
Okay.
In fact, the famous label introduced by Professor Greg Possel, the Middle Asian Interaction Sphere, described all the intercultural exchanges. What I'm trying to say here, that as far as we can say, the Indus people introduced and developed an extremely complex model to manage this long distance trade. It's very kind of modern, but the problem is that we have this evidence from the Indus side, because the fact that we cannot read the inscriptions on the seals, or we don't have long inscription, forced us to study the production, the crafts of the Indus civilization in great detail. We used analytical techniques, ethnoarchaeology, experimental archaeology. So we have a very detailed and precise understanding of all the specific features of Indus productions, as brilliantly shown by Prabhakar in the previous presentation. So we were able, using the same approach, also to identify the specific components of Indus production in productions abroad, not just the exchange of finished goods, but also the application of specific, for example, drilling technique, or other, for example, carving techniques for seals. Maybe, we cannot say at the moment, maybe this happened also for other cultures, were applied also by other cultures, but the fact that they mainly relied on written sources to reconstruct intercultural trade prevented us from understanding whether this model for this marketing strategy was also implemented by other cultures. My present feeling is that this was not the case, that the Indus civilization, for several reasons, were very advanced in managing and organizing external trade, long-distance trade with other cultures. And this is also evident by the number and extent of Indus objects found in all other cultures, in all other regions. So this is probably, but I would really love to see in the future, to see scholars working in other regions applying the same approach that we were forced, of course, to apply for the Indus Valley, because we are not yet able to read the script. So this way we could have a more general, let's say global understanding of this very, very interesting phenomenon. For the moment, what we are trying to define for the Indus civilization may pave the path for future research also in other areas, and I think it's important. Of course, it's very sensitive and complex to apply, modern models, economic models like globalization, localization to ancient situations. So we are trying to define, basic founding principle and see how they adapt to the ancient phenomenon.
Okay. This was also remarked, there were some remarks yesterday that you find a lot of Indus material in other places, but the reverse doesn't seem to be true. In various excavations, at least we have not been able to find significant material from other cultures. I mean, for example, it would have been easy to have assumed that you can get a clay tablet of the Sumerian region found here. It would be intact. There'll be some scribbles, but that has not been the case.
No.
So what were you then trading? You give something, you got to get something back, or the cash equivalent, if you are talking about the modern economics, which is very unlikely that they had money exchange, etc. So they should have got something, and what could that be? And that we have no evidence.
We always have to consider and remember that most of the trade in the past, mainly long distance trade, was the so-called invisible trade.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we have no evidence for textiles, for example, which according to the text, the cuneiform text, mainly from the War III period, were the basic exchange commodity. Most of the copper, for example, from Magan, which is Southeastern Arabia, was paid in textile or oil or perfumes.
Could be wine, different spirits.
Yeah, but in that case, we have the containers. But for textiles, for wood, all the perishable materials, they constitute the bulk of this trade, probably, according to the text, and we have no evidence for that.
Were they also getting food items? Were they also getting food items, spices and things like that?
Yes, in the case of very high quality or special products, one of the possible reasons why we have a lot of Indus pottery in Oman, let's say in Eastern Arabia, is maybe because they needed staple commodities like a lot of food. While maybe in Mesopotamia, in Iran, they have their own food production, there was no need to move big quantities of food. But usually food is not, unless there are, spices, for example.
It won't stay for long.
Yeah. So it's not. There is an amazing recent paper, in a slightly later period, of, let's say, the end of the third millennium, so beginning of the second, on the trade of spices based on the analysis of tooth in the Levant.
Okay.
So they found a lot of Indian spices traded, and they are invisible to unless you perform very sophisticated analysis, chemical analysis. So this is something we should try also to consider. Unfortunately, in the region, there is little excavation at the moment. One of the reasons why I start working in Oman, is that it's one of the regions where there is a lot of activities, a lot of research, field work going on. So we were able to find new objects and analyze them with new techniques. Analyzing pottery from old excavation, for example, from Mesopotamia, is difficult. There is high risk not to find that they were contaminated. And so I really hope in the future that also in India and in Pakistan, they resume large-scale excavation, or they increase the number of sites under excavation, so our Indian colleagues, of course, can apply new methods to provide more information and help by collaboration to define this phenomenon in more detail.
Yeah.
So in any case, coming back to your original question about the rarity of foreign objects in the Indus Valley, the original explanation was religious, or let's say cultural. They didn't want to import objects that they consider impure somehow. But this, is the typical answer of archaeologists when they don't have an answer. It's ritualistic. So we are now this is always, of course, a possibility, but now we are trying to define something more on an economic basis. Like if you have craftspeople, if you have merchants moving abroad, they settle there, maybe, in a society of that complexity, they basically act like a foreign, foreign subsidiary. And they don't need basically to send something back. So this is a possibility. Of course, unfortunately, our understanding of the social economic organization of the Indus civilization is still quite partial. So we don't know how the Indus civilization was managed in terms of political organization, socio-economic organization, but also understanding how they interacted with policies or culture or economic entities abroad can help to define also the internal organization of the Indus civilization. So I think it's a very important field of study.
Right.
I wanted to ask you one question. See, a lot of Indus Valley objects have been found in the other areas, no? And they are also available locally. Is there a vast difference between what is available locally vis-a-vis what has been found in the other sites? Because when we're talking about adapting to foreign markets and foreign culture, I just wanted to know, suppose pottery or beads or whatever that you're finding within the Indus Valley, is it very different from what is found in the other cultures?
You mean in the other cultures, they'll own local productions?
No. What has gone from here?
Yeah.
To there?
Okay. Of course, there are several issues. I mean, there are objects that were produced in the Indus Valley standard. They were traded locally and they were also traded abroad. Or there were objects that they were made outside the Indus Valley using Indus raw materials or Indus techniques and technologies or a combination of them, but following, the local art style, for example. Like, for example, this is typical of the ivories that I show from Central Asia, or the beads, some of the beads from the Royal Cemetery of Ur. And then what we found recently is perfectly Indus style materials that you cannot recognize that they were not made in the Indus from just naked eye. But if you analyze them with geochemical techniques, you discover that they were made using local raw materials, like the pottery from Oman. So the picture is very complex, and there were different inputs. There were objects that were made in the Indus Valley. They were traded both locally and abroad. Objects that they were made abroad in the local style, but using Indus technologies. And Indus-style objects made using Indus techniques, possibly or probably by Indus craftspeople, but using local raw materials. So very complex,
Local raw
very
materials,
modern model.
With the style perhaps ordered by the foreign
Possibly.
consumer. Saying, hey, I would like it this way rather than the usual supply that you are providing, because our tastes are slightly different. That's
For example, I just mentioned them, but I didn't went into details. There are Buddhist stories telling about ivory carvers from northern India that moved to Central Asia to offer the local elites their skills. And the stories tell how they use their amazing skills in ivory carving to make something in the local styles. And one of them is beautiful because it tells these ivory carvers from India was invited for dinner. And he said, okay, I will bring rice, my rice, special rice. And they start cooking the rice, and the rice never ready. So and then he eventually tell that it was not rice, it was just small rice grains made from ivory. So this way he got the let's say the position, and he was hired by this king of I don't remember which kingdom in Central Asia.
Okay.
So it's full. There are several stories. So this is a model that probably remain, is economically probably profitable somehow, and it relied entirely on the amazing skills, technical skills that Indian peoples or peoples in Southern Asia always had from the Neolithic and in the Indus period.
Okay. There is a question that Gandhi Gopinath asks, which you may be also seeing. Is there evidence of Indus ivory artifacts in West Asia, Levant, and Anatolia? The ivory articles. You said it is available in Central Asia.
It's strange because ivory apparently was mainly traded or found in Central Asian sites. There is some ivory combs in Eastern Arabia, like at the site of Tel Abrak and one in Ras Al Jins. But what is strange is that two of the combs from Tel Abrak, which is near the Strait of Hormuz in the UAE, were recorded. They have Central Asian motifs. So somehow they arrive in Arabia through Central Asia. So in Mesopotamia at the time, I read the question on YouTube. In Mesopotamia at the time, they mainly used hippopotamus fake ivory. And the only representations of elephants outside the Indus Valley at the time were only on seals of Indus style or Indus-related style. So, and for example, of course, the other source of ivory at the time, true ivory from elephant, was Egypt or Nubia in Egypt. But when you examine the available text, cuneiform text, for example, from Ebla, they obtained ivory from Africa. And in Mesopotamia, they use hippopotamus ivory, mainly also obtained from Africa. There is this idea in the second millennium of the local presence of the so-called Syrian elephant. But according to the textual evidence, maybe this is possible in the end of the second, beginning of the first millennium. According to zoo archaeologists, thanks to importation of small, of elephants from India. And they grew there for some time, then they extinguish again. But for the third millennium, there is no possibility that there were elephants in the Middle East, only in India or in Africa. And there was no connection between Mesopotamia and Africa or Central Asia and Africa at the time. And all the models of this trade were with the Indus Valley. So we are pretty confident that the skill, or at least the main interaction about ivory, was with the Indus Valley.
You talked about some of the ivory came from Hippopotami, but that will be a much smaller, thinner, nowhere in the size of an elephant ivory.
Of course.
But in terms of hardness and ability to work, are they sort of similar?
No. Of course, the objects are different, completely different. It's very, very easy to recognize them. And they were worked in a different way. Ivory is basically, to work ivory, you need the same set of tools and techniques to work hardwood or bone somehow. But at some point, in order to produce large ivory objects, that they remain, let's say, in circulation for a long time without cracking, without breaking, you need to know exactly how to treat the materials. It's the similar practices also for hardwood, but for example, they often soak the materials into hot water for some time to prevent cracking, and then they dry it very slowly in controlled atmosphere, and the temperature and time for wood and for ivory are different. if you treat ivory as you treat wood, it cracks. So the people who work these objects, they were familiar with the techniques developed to work ivory. So this is the reason why we believe that they were from South Asia, because in the Indus Valley, the first elephant tusk was found in a grave in Mergar in like 6 or 7 millennium BC.
Okay. There is a somewhat provocative question from Pradosh Biswas. I think all the Indus-related seals shown in the last few slides of yours, that is sort of right in the middle of your presentation, in Central Asia and Middle East, are they all confirmed Harappan designs? Couldn't the bull and ox simply be a local animal at those locations?
No, I understand. Most of them, they show animals that were not endemic in Mesopotamia or Central Asia, but of course the bulls or oxen. But the style of representing those animals in Mesopotamia was different in the local art style. For example, in Mesopotamia, when they represented bulls, in most cases, they represented them only with one horn. Consider the other perfectly superimposed in profile, so you only see one. This is the reason why at the beginning, scholars, like 100 years ago, they believed that the Harappan unicorns was a bull with two horns represented in like Mesopotamian style. Now we know that this is definitely not the case. So we are pretty confident that also because most, if not all of those cylinder seals that we consider Harappan style or related, Indus-related, were made in high-fire steatite, which is a technology typical of the Indus seal making. They didn't use that technique in Mesopotamia for cylinder seals. So there are several components that concur to suggest that they were related somehow to the Indus seal tradition.
And in any of the seals, if you find eventually the Indus characters or symbols, then that is very clear that it is not local, right? That immediately rules out, irrespective of whatever animal images that are there. Right?
Of course.
Yeah. Taking off from there, it's given the amount of work that you have put in Oman and the Middle East, are there character sets somewhat closely resembling the Indus set or deviations, variations that have been found anywhere in that region? Because typically, I will ask you the reason behind my questioning, right? You take India and its own script as elsewhere. You start with Brahmi and then it slowly changes every century. And then it moves to something in the north and something else entirely different in south. And every few centuries, it's so much moved away from original that if you are, without special expertise, you can't really read them. Even if you know the modern one, you can't read the old one or vice versa. Now, you are talking about many hundreds of years of Indus Harappan civilization. The seals should have also dramatically changed normally. I mean, if you are applying the same rule there. But the seals don't show that. There are variations, but not that kind of variation.
No. In fact, I only include a few slides from a presentation that usually takes up to a couple of hours about seals, Indus seals, from my research, because I asked myself why Indus seals are so conceptually standardized in terms of iconography, how the iconography relates to the inscription, and how they remain so standardized for almost 1 millennium, because the earliest of those seals is 2800 BC. So my answer, I compared them with cylinder seal in Mesopotamia, which
Okay.
are in the same time span. They are completely different in terms of there is a great variety of stones, of iconographies. They tried like to differentiate one from the other as much as possible. So I found that these different approaches, standardization, conceptual standardization in the Indus, and multiplication of different options in Mesopotamia can be defined by different models of the so-called, what is now called the branding theory. And basically, by applying these models, you understand that the Indus seals, they did not represent economically completing clans or individuals, because otherwise, with one of those clans or individuals, the unicorn, with like 70 or 80% of the occurrences, it will have eaten or absorbed all the other components in 1 millennium. The only possibility is that they were more like, corporate ID badges, like we have in modern society, where the unicorn represent one role, the bison another role. So, but they were all not competing, where they're cooperating within the same organization. So this is at the moment, my answer to this question.
Okay. Interesting. Because everywhere else there's a change. So that in that case, your theory that it is a script for a language itself is slightly under question. There are so many theories on whether it represents only numbers or whether it represents.
The fact that they use Indoscript according to statistic analysis, also to encode different languages.
Right.
This should tell us that they were encoding, language also in the Indus Valley, not just symbols or.
Right.
And the fact that if my interpretation of the use of the seals for economic practices is correct, which maybe is not the case, but for the moment I believe it's correct, based on the present evidence, encoding names, or let's say personal identification, is very difficult if you don't use phonemes or sounds, because you can write a sentence including actions by using symbols.
Okay.
You can design a small man doing something and you understand. But personal identification is a little bit more complex. And if we analyze the origin of the Indus script, which originated from symbols, signs scratched on pottery before firing to identify the potters in collective firings during the 4th millennium. And the same corpus of signs eventually was transferred on seals, but probably still indicating personal identification. So I believe that at the moment, the most probable interpretation of Indus script is that it was probably I don't know the organization. I cannot say it was syllabic or not, but it was used to replicate, at least in part, a language or languages, apparently.
Just one of the points made by the speaker yesterday, Ajit Prasad, that they must have certainly spoken multiple languages given the wide geographical area they were living in. And which there are examples even today of a single script representing multiple languages, maybe even differently, totally differently pronounced, with all possible variations, very much possible. Yeah. In an earlier talk, someone was really talking about to do thorough analysis of Indus, you have to actually go to Sumeria, because if you keep digging there further, chances are that you are likely to get a lot more of information about the Indus civilization, Harappan civilization there, than trying to get some kind of a written record or a Rosetta Stone equivalent, etc. here. You have any view on that, given your extensive research outside of India?
Yeah, that will be a dream, to find a bilingual or by script Rosetta Stone for the Indus. But we sometimes make mistake to project ancient societies into the modern world. So our society is extremely highly literate. So the fact that we use the same script to write different languages doesn't mean that, or even in the past, even if they spoken different languages, they use the writing system to write all those languages. Because the fact that the seals or the inscribed objects are so archaeologically important, it doesn't mean that they were probably highly specialized objects only used by a specific segment of the society. And maybe they created, a common language or to understand each other. Or maybe there was this, commercial language or something like English is becoming somehow for our modern world, or Chinese maybe, or India, I don't know, in the future. So the fact that they spoke multiple languages, different languages, is not probably as very important to interpret these inscribed objects, because it's highly probable that the economic and cultural entities that used writing in the past, they were very limited and probably underwent high training, scribal training. So they were probably trained to write, of course, the script and use the same language. So this is what happened also in other regions.
Okay.
So
thank you.
My pleasure.
It was really wonderful. Despite those little hiccups right through, just beyond our capacity. I don't know where the problems happened, but anyway, it's wonderful to get to see so much of excellent photographs, and they have given a very good insight. In fact, I would say right through both the presentations today and yesterday, we are seeing so much of material which is probably quite common in the research journals. They are new to us as we see each of the images. It's quite really exciting. Thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for your presence and answering all the questions.
Thank you very much
for winding up day 2 proceedings.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Frenez. That was really a wonderful lecture. Thank you, Dr. Prasad, for a wonderful lecture, and also for helping us regarding the execution of this program. Tomorrow, we have 2 more lectures lined up for you. First, we have Seals of the Indus Tradition and what they tell us about the people and cultures and who made and used them, by Dr. Greg Jamison. And then we have Gujarat, a Harappan Hub by Dr. S.V. Rajesh. Also, for all those people who missed today's lecture or yesterday's lecture, they'll be available at our YouTube link. I think with that we come to the end of day 2. Thank you so much. Hoping to see all of you at 5:30 tomorrow. Good night.